Text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain?
Good afternoon, Britain. This is GB News. Now we're live at the Labour Party conference. Rachel Reeves, our Chancellor, has just started talking.
Investment or decline? To invest in Britain's renewal or to carry on with the same Tory economics and the same results? So for jobs and for pay, for energy independence and for our national security, we chose investments. The Tories wouldn't invest when they were in power. The Tories now oppose that choice from opposition. So conference, don't ever let anyone tell you that there's no difference between a Labour government and a Conservative government. We would run the economy differently. No longer would we turn a blind eye to where things are made and who makes them, or shrug our shoulders when the national interest is on the line. Because a strong economy must rest on strong foundations. I call that approach securonomics. That's why, when the shipbuilder Harland and Wolff was in danger, we chose to step in. To guarantee a future for shipbuilding in Belfast, in Devon and in Fife. And I am proud to see the British shipbuilding industry going from strength to strength. With just last month, a record £10 billion export order from Norway for Scottish-built frigates. Taking action to protect the automotive industry, the jewel in the crown of British manufacturing, with a £1.5 billion loan guarantee to support Jaguar Land Rover, provide certainty and support for the jobs in its business and in its supply chain. And in April, when the foreign owners of British Steel rejected our offers of support, redirected essential materials overseas, and prepared that company to close, we faced another choice. We could do what the Tories did and stand idly by while jobs and industrial capacity were lost, or we could choose a different path, to take control of that company in the national interest. That was not just an economic choice, but a test of our conviction, our patriotism, and our Labour values. This government was not willing. This government was not willing, I was not willing, to tolerate a situation in Britain's steel capacity was fundamentally undermined. And nor was I willing to see yet another working class community lose its pride, lose the prosperity, lose the dignity that industry provides. So we chose to intervene, to save British steel and the jobs that go with it. The Tories would not back British steel, and they wouldn't back Britain's steel workers. But this Labour government is unequivocal. There must be a future, there will be a future for steel forged here on British soil. I can tell you more. We are introducing new legislation to put our economic security first. We understand your cause and we are recognising a Palestinian state, but we are now a party in government, not a party of protest. And I'm proud to stand here as your Chancellor, the Chancellor that's increased the minimum wage, a Chancellor that is introducing free breakfast clubs and free school meals, a Chancellor that's overseen 5 cuts to interest rates. That's the difference we make, and that is the difference we make in power, not through protest. Our party has changed, and that is why I am standing here, proud to be your Chancellor of the Exchequer. We're putting Britain first, empowering us to prioritise British-built ships and British-forged steel, strengthening our national economic security, and creating good manufacturing jobs here in Britain. Because where things are made and who makes them does matter. And as we build those new railways and new roads, the new power stations and new runways for this generation and the next, we want the security and the good unionised jobs that come from making things here in Britain. I promised you we'd run the economy differently. The Tories didn't do it and they still don't get it, but Labour does. So don't let anyone ever tell you that there's no difference between a Labour government and a Conservative government. There is one reason why we have the power to make these choices. It's not a matter of luck or a routine swing in the political pendulum. It is because, thanks, Keir, to your leadership and to the efforts of countless people in this hall and beyond, that we earned the privilege to serve. Because we, every one of us, gave our all to regain the trust of the British people, to earn this precious chance to put our values into practice. Let me tell you what brought me here and what gets me up every morning. Let me tell you what I believe in and what drives me. Conference, you know where I come from. My mum and dad were primary school teachers and I'm really proud of that. I know how hard they worked to give all the children that they taught the very best start in life. I know how hard all our teachers work. And I know parents' hopes and fears when it comes to their kids. I feel them for my own. But ordinary families find themselves fighting against a system which hoards privilege at the top and leaves too many working class kids behind. I joined the Labour Party almost 30 years ago now because I could see that the Conservative governments I grew up under in the 80s and 90s, they didn't care much about schools like mine. Ellie knows that too. They didn't care much about the kids we grew up with. Textbooks rationed, libraries closed, kids herded into porter cabins, their prospects written off. I joined our party because I wanted to change all that. And those same values drive me now today. Conference, I believe in a Britain founded on contribution, where we do our duty for each other and where hard work is matched by fair reward. I believe in a Britain based on opportunity, where ordinary kids can flourish, unhindered by their backgrounds. And I believe that Britain's real wealth is found not only in the success of the fortunate few, but in the talents of all our people, in every part of our great country. But Conference, we all know that our shared values can only achieve things for ordinary people if we have the power to act on them and a credible plan to put them into effect. A plan fit for an uncertain world in which we find ourselves, not for the world that we wish it might be. A plan to build a stronger, more resilient economy, able to navigate this age of insecurity. No one said it was going to be easy, but take pride in what we are achieving together. Not just the pride in winning, but pride too in the choices we are making and the lives we are changing. Remember that in every single one of the 451 days that we have been in office, we have achieved more than in the more than 5,000 days that we spent powerless in opposition. Every day since the 4th of July last year has brought with it a chance to change Britain for the better. Creating Britain's first genuine living wage, getting spades in the ground on new road and rail projects, backing our communities to strengthen pride in place, including here in Merseyside with the reopening of Southport Pier, investing in homegrown British energy, freezing fuel duty, capping bus fares, recruiting new neighbourhood police, opening school breakfast clubs, expanding free school meals, lifting 100,000 children out of poverty as we do it, and delivering a pay rise, a deserved pay rise, to our nurses, our teachers, our police and our armed forces. And Conference, we're making the NHS fit for the future too, with £29 billion a year towards its day-to-day funding, a record cash investment, the NHS, created by a Labour government, protected by every Labour government, and renewed by this Labour government. Let me tell you something else we will do. I remember as a kid that my school library was turned into a classroom because there were more students than there was space. Think about the message that that sends about a government's priorities. How little value is placed on opportunities for kids to learn and to grow, to explore their interests independently, or to find a quiet place to study that isn't always on offer at home. Under another Conservative government, a generation later, many more kids have that experience. Today in England, there are 1,700 primary schools that don't have a school library. That's not right, and I will not let it stand. So I am committing here today to providing a library in every single primary school in England by the end of this Parliament. Of my values. That is a statement of the value that this government places on all our children's futures. So Conference, the Tories don't make those choices, Reform would never make those choices. So take pride. Take pride in our values put into action. And Conference, don't ever let anyone tell you that there's no difference between a Labour government and a Conservative government. Remember how it felt to look on as the Tories took our country in the wrong direction. Austerity, the botched Brexit deal, the mini-budget, school roofs crumbling, NHS waiting lists soaring, 5 prime ministers, 7 chancellors, the worst parliament on living standards ever. Our institutions and our country's very reputation in tatters. And never forget what they did during the pandemic. While we were kept apart from our loved ones and feared for our families, the Conservatives partied in Downing Street and dished out contracts to their friends and to their donors. We are still paying the bill for their waste and their cronyism. So I'm pleased to tell you that thanks to our COVID Corruption Commissioner, almost £400 million has now been recovered for taxpayers that have been lost to COVID fraud. And we will continue that fight, and we will continue that fight to recover more from those PPE contracts that failed to deliver. But we won't stop there. In the coming months, we are bringing in additional new powers to investigate and recover more money from fraudsters who have ripped off the government and ripped off our public services. And I can tell you today too that to deploy those new powers, we are recruiting a new hit squad to investigate and recover all the money that is owed to the British people. Because, conference, we want our money back. We are getting that money back, and we are putting it where it belongs, in our communities, in our schools, and in our National Health Service. But the most enduring consequences of the Conservatives' time in office come from their economic failure. They made Britain poorer. They made working people poorer. And they left our public finances in disarray. The single biggest factor underlying Britain's challenges on the cost of living, on the public finances, and on our public services is their 14-year failure on economic growth. If the UK economy had grown at just the average of other advanced economies in those 14 years, our economy today would be £140 billion bigger. That's almost £5,000 for every family in the UK. Our economic renewal will rest on stability to keep taxes, inflation and interest rates as low as possible. Economic reform to unlock the contribution of businesses and working people, and investment in every part of Britain. Each day, I see a country primed for economic success. A skilled and committed workforce, world-class universities and innovative businesses. But the Conservatives and Reform, they want you to believe that our economy is broken, that our best days lie behind us, that decline is inevitable. I fundamentally reject that. It's not the country I see around me, not the future that I believe in. I know that things are still difficult. Bills are too high. Getting ahead can feel tough. And there are still too many obstacles in the way for businesses. And so our central economic objective is to change that. Growth to improve living standards is a challenge, and investment is a solution. By overhauling our planning system, reforming our pension system, launching Britain's very first national wealth fund and a modern industrial strategy, and signing new trade deals to back our manufacturers and our exporters, with India, with the United States, and with our closest neighbours and allies in Europe. Just this month, thanks to Keir's hard work, we secured £150 billion of overseas investment just from the United States. I have never believed the Tory mantra that the best thing that a government can do is to get out of the way. A strategic state must use its power to support jobs and growth, and that includes through public investment. Under the Tories, capital spending was always the first victim when the public finances came under strain. So in last autumn's budget, I changed those fiscal rules to support and to protect investment. And alongside that, because I know that too often our regions outside London and the South East have not had their fair share of spending decisions, I rewrote those rules to support investment in every part of Britain. In place of decline, we have chosen investment. Investment in defence and the good jobs that come with that. In Plymouth and in Barrow, in Aldermaston and Lincoln, on the Clyde and in Rosyth. Investment in energy, in nuclear power, yes, and in carbon capture and storage too. On the Humber and on Teesside, in Aberdeenshire and right here on Merseyside. Investment in transport, including the biggest ever investment in our city regions. We're investing here in Merseyside, with new links in St Helens and major investment in Merseyrail, including a new station at Liverpool Baltic. We're investing in Greater Manchester, with new tram stops in Bury, North Manchester, Oldham and Stockport. And we're investing in West Yorkshire to power ahead with a mass transit system, linking Bradford and Leeds, the largest city in Western Europe without a light rail or metro system, but not for much longer. We're investing in South Yorkshire and backing Doncaster Sheffield Airport. We're investing in the North East to extend the Tyne and Wear Metro, linking Washington with Newcastle and Sunderland. We're investing in the East Midlands to link up the Trent Arc. We're investing in the West Midlands, extending the Birmingham Metro and backing the Midlands Rail Hub to link Birmingham, Worcestershire and Herefordshire with Wales. And we're investing in Welsh railways with new stations and new infrastructure, the benefits of two Labour governments working together. And we're investing in East-West Rail to join up the Oxford-Cambridge Growth Corridor and Conference, as well as the Transpennine route upgrade to link Manchester, Leeds and York and the towns in between them. This Labour government will push ahead with our plans for Northern Powerhouse Rail. Plans never delivered by the Conservatives, plans opposed by Reform, but backed by this Labour government, a vote of confidence in the north of England, to get people to work, to connect families, to create jobs, and to build prosperity in towns and cities scarred by underinvestment for far too long. That is what we are achieving together, a Labour government working with our Labour leaders around the country, delivering for working people. Investing in defence and energy and transport. The housing crisis is one of the greatest challenges that we face. Every family deserves the security, safety and the joy of a good home. That is why we are powering ahead with our commitment to build 1.5 million homes in this Parliament. And any plan to match the scale of that housing crisis must involve a major role for social housing, which is why I allocated £40 billion in the spending review just a few months ago. The biggest cash investment into council, social and affordable housing in a generation. So Conference, don't ever let anyone tell you that there's no difference between a Labour government and a Conservative government. But Conference, let us be clear. All that we are doing is only possible because we, all of us, put in the hard work to show the British people that we could be trusted to manage our economy. Because we were unequivocal in our commitment to economic responsibility. And I will never, ever squander that hard-earned trust. We were able to increase investment only because we remained steadfast in that commitment to economic responsibility. That is not a trade-off with our Labour values. It is essential to our Labour values. Because our ambition for Britain, our dedication to social justice, is not measured in the size of the deficit you are willing to run, but in the choices we make to defend and advance the interests of working people. And responsible management of our public finances is an integral part to that most basic mission. It is because of the stability that we have created that we have seen 5 cuts to interest rates since the general election. Mortgage costs coming down and hundreds of pounds back in the pockets of working people. Conference, every advance we make in getting the cost of living down is a Labour achievement, and we should take pride in that. When I said that we must not and would not take risks with Britain's economic stability, that argument was not just for an election. Even now, with the global uncertainty that we have seen ripple through financial markets, there are still critics out there who would too readily forget the consequences of reckless economic choices. Never forget that in 2 hours, one Friday, almost exactly 3 years ago, the Conservatives under Liz Truss sent mortgage costs spiralling, put pensions in peril, and consigned their party not just to defeat, but to utter irrelevance. That was a warning. And the British people will not forgive any party that forgets it. Conference, let us reaffirm our commitment that we will never ever do what the Conservatives did to ordinary working people in this country. But I do know that there are still people who peddle the idea that we could just abandon economic responsibility and cast off any constraints on spending. They are wrong. Dangerously so. And we need to be honest about what that choice would mean. Because when spending gets out of control, when market confidence is lost, that doesn't just show up in some OBR report and some difficult headlines a few months later. It is felt immediately in the growing cost of essentials and rising interest rates. And let me tell you, there is nothing progressive, nothing Labour, about government using 1 in every £10 of public money it spends on financing debt to interest. Billions of pounds every single year going towards repaying debt racked up by the Tories, paid to overseas hedge funds and investors. That's not how I want to spend public money. In the months ahead, we will face further tests, with the choices to come made all the harder by harsh global headwinds and the long-term damage done to our country, which is becoming ever clearer. Our first year in power was about fixing the foundations. Our second must be about building a renewed economy for a renewed Britain. A renewed economy that works for working people and rewards their contribution. A renewed economy where we reject austerity and support our public services. A renewed economy that supports investment, that gets inflation and borrowing down, and where we build growth in every part of Britain. I will make my choices at that budget. They will be choices to take our country forward. And whatever tests come our way, whatever tests come my way, I make this commitment to you. I will take no risks with the trust placed in us by the British people. Remember everything that is at stake here. The single greatest threat to our way of life and to the living standards of working people is the agenda of Nigel Farage and the Reform Party. Whatever falsehoods they push, whatever easy answers they peddle, however willing they are to tear communities and families apart, they are not on the side of working people. Conference, here are the questions that we must never tire of repeating between now and the next election. Who is standing up for Britain's working people? A Labour government introducing the biggest upgrade of workers' rights in decades? Or a Reform Party which has opposed those rights every single step of the way? Who is standing up for Britain's interests? A Labour government that stands with our allies? Or a Reform Party in bed with Vladimir Putin? Who is standing up for Britain's economic stability? A Labour government resolute in getting prices and interest rates down? Or a Reform Party that cheered on the mini-budget of Liz Truss? Who is standing up for Britain's businesses? A Labour government that is forging closer relationships with our nearest trading partners? Or a Reform Party who wants to talk Britain down and longs to cut us off from the rest of the world? And who is standing up for Britain's National Health Service? A Labour government investing record amounts in our NHS? Or a Reform Party opposed to the very principle of a publicly funded healthcare system free at the point of use? Every time, on every issue, it is Labour that is standing up for working people and standing up for our national interest. Friends, this is a fight that we must win, and it is a fight that we will win. So when you leave this hall, when you return to your communities and your workplaces, let the message ring out that there is only one party that was founded by working people, and only one party that is committed absolutely to defending their interests, on jobs and on pay, on rights at work, on health and in our schools, on the safety of our streets and the strength of our communities, on energy security and on national security. The clue is in the name, conference. That party, the party of working people, is the Labour Party. I'll tell you about my patriotism. It's about the strength of our military and the security of our borders, absolutely. But it goes well beyond that. It's about building a country where we recognise that talent is found in every classroom, not just among those at the top. That working people of every background, wherever they grow up, have more in common with each other than those who wish to divide us. That every town and city, every region and nation in this United Kingdom has a part to play in our shared success. A country where we look out for each other, in good times and in bad, where we back British businesses to succeed in the world, and where we back working people too. So that honest work pays a wage that you can afford to live on. Where we recognise that we are strongest when we work together towards that better Britain. A patriotism not measured in how quick you are to exclude, how loudly you shout, how willing you are to exploit every division and distort every challenge that we face. But a patriotism measured in our obstinate determination, our impatience, our commitment to building a better, fairer, more prosperous Britain. That is our patriotic mission. Those are our Labour values. Those are our British values, and we will fight for them. Conference, never forget who we do this for. Before the summer, I was at a breakfast club in the north of England. It was 8:30 in the morning and there was a little boy sitting on the floor playing with his Lego. He showed me what he was building. He was really proud of his project and he wanted to tell me all about it. I enjoyed sitting with him and listening to him talk. Afterwards, one of the teachers said something that stayed with me. She said, "You know that boy, when he started coming to breakfast here, he didn't speak at all. He was completely silent." I was shocked, but maybe I shouldn't have been. Because stories like that are too common in Britain. And I thought about the money that we're putting into breakfast clubs. What does that pay for? Some toast and cereal, maybe some juice, an extra hour of a teacher's time to keep an eye on the kids. But what does it actually buy? For that little boy sitting on the floor absorbed in his Lego, it bought him more than food. It bought him an opportunity. The opportunity of time spent at school in a more intimate environment, where he could play and feel at ease. The opportunity to start the school day ready to learn. The opportunity of a better start in life, and with it perhaps the opportunity of a better future. Conference, that's what we all fight for. That's who I fight for. That's who this party is for. Kids like him, families like his. I know that there is much more to do, and I promise you we will do it. But we should take pride in the lives already being changed by the choices that we have made. And let me tell you, there is no greater champion for working class kids than my friend and my colleague, our Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson. Believe me, she will not rest, and I will not rest until those barriers to opportunity are torn down. That is what we are in this for, friends. But those barriers don't just vanish the day a young person leaves school. The last Labour government supported hundreds of thousands of young people into work with its New Deal. But once again, under the Conservatives, too many young people found themselves trapped, frozen out of employment, education or training. There's no defending that. It's bad for business, bad for taxpayers, bad for our economy. And it scars people's prospects throughout the rest of their lives. At the spending review, I pledged record investment in skills to support our young people. And today I can announce that with that investment, we will fund a new youth guarantee. Every young person will be guaranteed either a place in college for those who want to continue their studies, or an apprenticeship to help them learn a trade vital to our plans to rebuild our country, or some one-to-one support to help them find a job. But more than that, our guarantee means that any young person out of work, education or training for more than 18 months will be given a paid work placement. Real work, practical experience, new skills. Conference, we won't leave a generation of young people to languish without prospects, denied the dignity, denied the security and the ladders of opportunity that good work provides. Just as the last Labour government achieved that with the New Deal, I commit this Labour government to nothing less than the abolition of long-term youth unemployment. We've done it before, Conference, and we will do it again, and that is the difference that this Labour government is making. Not all. We should not cut young people off from opportunities that my generation took for granted. And that means rejecting the politics of isolation and division, for which our young people pay the gravest price. It means defying those voices which claim to speak in the national interest, but which demand that our people, our communities, and our businesses suffer the consequences for a Britain cut off from the rest of Europe. I don't want young people to miss out on the chance to enrich their lives through travel, experiencing other cultures, working and studying abroad. Those opportunities cannot and must not be the sole preserve of the wealthy and the fortunate. So, as well as making it easier to trade with Europe, as well as making it easier to travel in Europe, I can tell you today that we are working with the European Union to secure for young people in Britain the maximum economic and cultural opportunities available through an ambitious agreement on youth mobility. So, conference, don't ever let anyone tell you that there's no difference between a Labour government and a Conservative government. This year has brought its fair share of challenges for our party and our country. They won't be the last. We've turned our backs on the path of decline, and we've chosen investment. But there is further to go. So yes, I'm proud that under our watch, Britain has been the fastest growing economy in the G7. But is there more to do if we want prosperity in every part of Britain? Absolutely. I'm proud to have overseen wages rising by more in the first 10 months of this Labour government than in the first 10 years of the previous Conservative government. But is there more to do if we want to make working people better off? Absolutely. And I'm proud that we've recruited 2,000 new GPs, delivered 5,000 extra appointments and cut NHS waiting lists by more than 200,000. But is there more to do if we want an NHS truly fit for the future? Absolutely. And conference, we are just getting started. So whatever challenges come our way, don't be deterred. Because I can see the destination if we stay true to our course. A Britain where every child can flourish, no matter their background or their parents' jobs or where they grow up. And never let anyone tell you that there's no difference between a Labour government and a Conservative government. When people ask you, who is this government for? When they ask you, whose side are you on? Then you can tell them. Go and ask the steel worker in Scunthorpe, the engineer in Barrow, the shipbuilder on the Clyde. Ask the mum on the living wage, going to work secure in their knowledge that her children will get a good start to the day. Ask the nurse who has had back-to-back pay rises due to this Labour government. Ask the business facing lower barriers to trade. And ask the patient, finally off a waiting list because of this Labour government. There is further to go. But whatever tests confront us, have faith. Because our party and our country have overcome greater challenges than these. Have faith, because the opportunity to serve is what we came into this for. Have faith, knowing that this Labour government will not rest. I will not rest until our patriotic cause is realised. In a Britain that prizes contribution, that unlocks opportunity, that silences the nagging voices of decline. And never let anyone tell you that there's no difference between a Labour government and a Conservative government. The world may throw challenges our way, but a better Britain is within reach. A Britain where the barriers to opportunity are torn asunder. A Britain able to look outwards with confidence. defiant in an uncertain world, powered by the contribution of its people, hopeful for our shared future. A proud Britain, a prosperous Britain, a Labour Britain. Thank you. Thank you, conference.
So that was Rachel Reeves. I thought the speech was only going to be half an hour, but she did that for about 45 minutes. Quite a few false endings there. But she talked a lot about how there's no difference between the Labour... Well, how there is a difference, sorry. And she drummed that home between the Labour Party and the Tory Party. And many stories of her youth and how things that she'd learned then she's going to implement now. The party's for working people. There's a bit where she said, who is standing for the NHS? They are. They're the party for more money. They're the fight that they must win. All right, let's join our GB News political editor, Christopher Hope, who's there at the conference live. Christopher, a lot of energy at the conference, a lot of support for Rachel, lots of standing ovations. Give us a summary of the things that she said.
That's right, Nana. I counted 5 mentions of the word patriotism. That's why we've been giving out these flags for GB News at this conference. No mention for Kevin Badenoch, barely any mention for the Conservatives. Nigel Farage featured quite largely again, as did Reform UK. She said there that Farage is the single greatest threat to the way of life and living standards of Britain. She said he's peddling easy answers, not on the side of working people. In bed with Vladimir Putin, she said. The party cheered on the mini-budget of Liz Truss, and Reform is opposed to the very principle of publicly funded healthcare. This party is defining itself against the one leading in the polls. That, of course, is Reform UK. She said we've been there for 451 days in office. The Tories had 5,000 days in power. During that time, of course, Labour were in opposition. And also on Brexit, that reared its head again. We heard there the confirmation we knew already, but to hear it again from the Chancellor, not heard that before, on Brexit, saying the government is working on an ambitious, what they call youth mobility scheme. That is basically 18 to maybe 25-year-olds or 29-year-olds allowed to travel to and fro between the UK and European Union. She said that was for economic and cultural opportunities, for an ambitious plan. And also she signalled, I think, the budget. Big worries, of course, in the UK at the moment about the taxation. Will borrowing go up? There's a £30 billion black hole in the economy. Next week, the OBR will come back with its forecast on productivity. It's set to say that productivity has fallen. That means find more money for Rachel Reeves to balance the books and reassure the markets. She said the choices to come, she said, will be made all the harder by harsh global headwinds, she said. Long-term damage to the economy becoming ever clearer, she said, and she'll make her choices, though, at the budget and not before. So there we have it. Rachel Reeves has spoken about 30-40 minutes there to the conference faithful, recognising the issues facing the economy outside of this kind of bubble we are in for the party conference, and throwing forward what will be a very difficult and challenging budget for her.
All right, thank you very much, Christopher Hope. Wow, it was a very long speech, but she did longer than we expected. Thank you very much. Well, joining me now is the Executive Director of the Institute for Economic Affairs, Tom Clougherty. Tom, so she did say a lot of things. So she talked about the fiscal rules. She talked about investment in energy, carbon capture. She talked about investment in Manchester, new investment in transport, Bradford, Leeds, South Yorkshire, East Midlands, West Midlands. Where is all this money going to be coming from?
Well, I think that's the crucial point, actually. She said a lot, as you say, but for me, this speech was most notable for what she didn't talk about. There was basically nothing about taxes in there at all. I think perhaps there was one line saying she'd like them to be as low as possible, but there were more mentions of breakfast clubs than there were of taxes from Britain's Chancellor of the Exchequer. And I think that's because we all know we have that OBR forecast coming, we have a budget looming, and we know there's a big fiscal black hole. Now, if you read between the lines in that speech, I suppose what you could say is she's framing Labour's mission as all about spending. It's about investing, it's about supporting public services. It's not so much about the private sector. It's certainly not about keeping the tax burden low. So if you want me to give an immediate takeaway from that speech, I'd say taxes are going up, and probably quite significantly this autumn. Now, there may have been a possibility for her to make a different argument when she's talking about fiscal responsibility and talking about borrowing costs, and say that, you know, a party of the left still has to be fiscally responsible. We can't live beyond our means. We can't just spend and spend and spend. I think she ducked that challenge. She made it about spending, she made it about investment, and that suggests to me that those manifesto promises on taxation are probably going to be broken in one form or another in the next couple of months.
Yeah, now she said this, which I hope I've got it down correctly. She said the Tories left the country in disarray, and if the UK economy had grown as fast as the other countries similar to it, it would be 140 million times bigger, I think she said.
I don't know if that was the exact number, but there's some truth in this.
I wrote it down. I was writing it down really fast, thinking 140 million.
There's some truth in this. Our biggest problem is the fact that the economy hasn't grown. And, of course, you can stretch this further back if you want to, but more or less since the financial crisis, growth has been low in the UK, and so living standards haven't risen. And, of course, there hasn't been the tax revenue supported by that private economy to pay for the kind of public services that probably a Labour government would want. Now, I think they're right to put that front and centre and say we need faster growth, and to say that the Conservatives failed to deliver that. But do they have a meaningful agenda for growth? It's all very well to stand there and say government's going to be strategic, government is going to invest. You can say we're on the side of business, or indeed she said, who's going to stand up for Britain's businesses? I think most business people are going to say, if the answer is you, we're in serious trouble, because you've seen the workers' rights bill coming. She mentioned that repeatedly. She talked about the unions a lot. You've seen the big tax increases on employment, the national minimum wage, and so on. This is not a government, really, that is about boosting the private sector and about trying to unlock a kind of economic dynamism in Britain. Yes, they say some nice things about planning. Yes, they say some nice things about energy, but there's very little delivery there. And let's just bear in mind, look at London, probably the place where we are most constrained, where we need the new housing most of all. It's pretty much frozen across Britain's capital city, across the engine of Britain's economic growth, and that's largely because of regulatory burdens that make it unviable to build. So they talk about growth. I don't think they're serious about it.
She did talk about housing. She said they're going to be building 1.5 million homes, and she said 40 billion for social housing, council housing and affordable accommodation. Now, she was inferring that British people would be put first, but she didn't really say that, but she kind of put forward, where's the 40 billion going to come from for the housing?
Well, it's going to be borrowed, like the rest of the money.
Right.
But we are living massively beyond our means. And, you think about this fiscal black hole. No one at this stage knows how big officially it is. That's going to depend on the OBR's growth forecasts and productivity and so on. But it looks like, private sector forecasters are saying we've got at least a 40 billion black hole if we get a big downgrade of productivity. It could be larger still. Those are huge numbers in fiscal terms. And I know people's eyes sort of tend to swim when you start talking about these big numbers. But that means big tax increases on ordinary people if they're going to bridge that gap with additional tax revenue, not by doing what I think they should do, by the way, which is just keep spending completely flat over the rest of the Parliament. If you do that, yes, there are challenges, but also you can balance the books and you don't need to raise taxes.
Yes, and neither Nokia Starmer would say whether they're going to raise VAT or not, which I think was quite interesting there. All right, Tom, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's Tom Clougherty. He's the Executive Director for the Institute for Economic Affairs. Right, let's go back and live to the Labour Party conference. Let's speak to my co-presenter, Tom Harwood, GBNews' Deputy Political Editor. He's there in Liverpool. Tom, so Rachel Reeves, there were so many false endings. I thought she was going to finish, and then there was a standing ovation, and then there was another one, and she was enjoying it out there. But what is the feedback where you are? What are people saying?
Nana, I've got to say, you were after that number that the Chancellor said in her speech how much bigger the economy would be. I've got her speech in my hands right here. I can see the number in black and white. She said £140 billion larger if the UK economy had grown at the average of other advanced economies over the last 14 years. I did some quick research to see if that is about right, and that does look like a very plausible estimate. The United States, Canada in particular, grew a lot faster than the United Kingdom. Worth saying that Japan, Italy and France grew slower, but because particularly the US and Canada grew so much faster, that actually the UK economy would be, I think it's around 6 or 7% larger had we grown at the average of those other G7 countries, and that equates to roughly £140 billion. Rachel Reeves set that out in more real, tangible terms, which is that's almost £5,000 per household. It was setting out the very real problem at the core of our politics, that there hasn't been any growth in this country for a very long time. I think the problem for Rachel Reeves, however, is that she has done literally nothing to turn it around. She promised to make growth her #1 watchword when she became Chancellor. And what have we got? The latest figures, July this year, 0% growth. It's not going well for the Chancellor. So yes, she's completely right that had we been growing faster, then we would have a lot more money, that these decisions would be a lot less painful. The problem is that we haven't been growing. We're not growing faster, and growth forecasts have been revised down. And that means there's less money to play with. And the big black hole at the heart of her speech, tax, where there was very little said, that is looking like it's going to be rising at the next budget in a painful way.
And very briefly, Tom, because we're going to be heading towards the news, as you well know, she didn't say anything really about migration, and she also she brought in Nigel Farage.
Yeah. I thought that was really interesting. For the first half hour of the speech, it was all Tories, Tories, Tories. No mention of reform. And I was thinking, hang on, has she forgotten which party is leading in the polls? But oh no, she was saving it up for an entire section of the speech reserved for Nigel Farage, and she hit him hard.
Yeah. Well, listen, Tom Harwood, superb. We'll be running in and out with you throughout the afternoon. Anyway, that's Tom Harwood. He's the co-presenter for GB News here on Good Afternoon Britain. I'm Nana Akua. If you've just tuned in, stay with us. We have so much more still to come. We'll be live at the Labour Party conference and bring you all the latest, plus all the big speeches that are on their way. But first, let's get your latest weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Fog clearing this morning and then a fine day for most of us. Some rain in the northwest, so not entirely dry across the United Kingdom. That rain courtesy of these weather fronts that are just going to brush into the northwest during the rest of Monday, thickening up the cloud across Scotland and Northern Ireland, bringing some higher cloud to parts of Wales and the southwest of England, so turning the sunshine a little more hazy. However, we keep the bright skies for the east of Scotland into eastern, central and southeastern England. Sunny spells. Temperatures doing well, 19 Celsius, but not feeling so pleasant where we've got the cloud thickening and those outbreaks of rain pushing into parts of western and central Scotland, northwest England and Northern Ireland, along with a freshening breeze. But across England and Wales, it's a largely fine end to the day. Clear spells as the sun goes down. A few spots of rain there for Snowdonia, for example, and northwest England. Northern Ireland also 1 or 2 spots of rain as the cloud thickens, but the more persistent rain will be reserved for the west coast of Scotland and parts of northern Sutherland and Caithness. Into the evening, and those outbreaks of rain continue on and off for the north and west of Scotland. Northern Ireland sees a bit more rain coming along overnight, but for much of the rest of the UK, it's a dry night with clear spells, and as a result, along with the light winds, temperatures will fall away. Another chilly night to come for the south and southeast. A few mist and fog patches to wake up to on Tuesday morning. These will clear through the morning, and then plenty of sunny spells once again for the south and southeast. But for Scotland, Northern Ireland, for northwest England and for parts of North Wales, we're going to see a cloudy day with, again, light outbreaks of rain on and off through the day. A breezy day for many, but it's going to turn much wetter and much windier in the far northwest by Wednesday.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
You could bank an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. And if that wasn't enough, you'll also get to drive away in this brand new motorhome. This brand new 2025 Benamar Primero could be yours. It comes with all the mod cons you'd expect from a vehicle worth over £74,000 and comfortably sleeps 4 people. This prize package is worth over £104,000. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Are you panicking when you're in Northern Ireland when you go out and about because there is a lack of chargers?
Well, listen, I'm really pro-EV, and we've had the odd issue with broken EV chargers, in particular yesterday at both Ballymoney at Beasties and also over at Dunsilley. We had issues with chargers, but the charging infrastructure is used very rarely. My mother, for example, she has overnight charging at home. She's never used a public charger, and she's had the car for 3 years.
Yeah.
So if you've got that domestic overnight charging, it's cheap. It's very affordable if you buy a 2-year-old EV, and they are absolutely the way forward. I'm a Yorkshireman. I don't like parting with my brass. I want to get cheap motoring, and for less than a penny a mile and a car for less than 20 grand to start with, you know, it sounds a bit blasé saying £20,000, but relative to what these cars are new, they're incredible value for money, and we're seeing mass adoption. There's a garage in Richmond in North Yorkshire that sells more than half of the cars they sell are electric vehicles, and that's in a rural Dales area. So it's about having that domestic overnight charging and not having to rely on public infrastructure.
Danny, where it doesn't convince me at all is, right, so I'm living in London and I want to go to see Manchester United, and I might get there, but am I going to get back down again? Or worse still, if I'm not on full charge, I'm going to miss kickoff because I'm going to have to rely on a public charger somewhere. So is that the sort of anxiety? I mean, you were talking about range anxiety there, Ellie. Is that the sort of anxiety people have? I mean, I genuinely have that. Despite what we were hearing there from Fraser.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 1 o'clock on Monday, the 29th of September. I'm Nana Akua, and Tom Harwood is at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool. Rachel Reeves has taken to the stage for her keynote speech at the Labour conference in Liverpool. She addressed various challenges facing the country and spoke about investment and growth ahead of her highly anticipated autumn budget, but it didn't all go to plan for the Chancellor.
We are introducing new legislation to put our economic security first.
After 2 years of genocide, mass starvation of Palestinians.
We understand your cause, and we are recognising a Palestinian state.
She also turned her sights to Farage and Reform UK, who continue to cast a large shadow over the conference.
The single greatest threat to our way of life and to the living standards of working people is the agenda of Nigel Farage and the Reform Party. Whatever falsehoods they push, whatever easy answers they peddle, however willing they are to tear communities and families apart, they are not on the side of working people.
Here we are at the heart of the Labour Party conference. We've heard from the Chancellor, and perhaps what she didn't say was just as important as what she did say. We'll break it all down and so much more coming up.
Earn your place or pack your bags. That is a stark message from the Home Secretary as Labour unveils an immigration crackdown. Tough new rules on language, crime and community service. But will it work? And are we already at war with Russia? The former head of MI5 says that we may be right, pointing to poisoning, sabotage, cyber attacks and assassinations on UK soil. And GPs push back on online booking, warning it will pile on more pressure. But Health Secretary Wes Streeting says it's absurd to delay progress in making appointments easier. What do locals think of the East Midlands man who hit back after his England flag was torn down by painting his entire house as a Union Jack? We'll find out. A house painted with a Union Jack. Let's have a chat with my co-presenter Tom Harwood, who's live at the Labour Party conference. Also a very interesting moment with pro-Palestine protesters who interrupted Rachel Reeves' speech.
Yeah, really interesting, and I think probably the best moment of the speech for Rachel Reeves. She'd clearly been anticipating some form of heckle. I mean, it's become almost expected at the speeches of the Chancellor and the Prime Minister. I have to say, remembering back to 2021, I think it was, when Keir Starmer was new leader of the Labour Party, his speech was about half an hour longer than it should have been. There were so many heckles. It was heckles left, right and centre. So I think what happens now is that the leaders of the Labour Party and those leading figures in the Labour Party expect that people are going to do heckles. She was probably expecting a heckle on Gaza. It's been a thorn in the side of this party in government. But also, of course, she might have been expecting some heckles about a wealth tax or more economic issues. In the end of the day, it was only one heckle, and it was on Gaza. But she clearly had rehearsed her put down. She said, look, we understand your cause. She said, we have recognised a Palestinian state, but we're a party of power, not protest, and went on to list all sorts of things. I think it was the only real genuine standing ovation in that entire speech. The rest all seemed a little bit staccato. But it's interesting to look forward to what is happening next, of course. Later on today, the Home Secretary. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more after the latest news headlines.
Very good afternoon. It's just gone 1 o'clock. These are your top stories. While breaking in the last hour, Chancellor Rachel Reeves' speech at the Labour Party conference was interrupted by a pro-Palestinian heckler. The Chancellor was setting out measures Labour had taken to protect key British industries as a member of the audience in Liverpool began shouting about the, quote, mass starvation of Palestinians. Ms Reeves defended Labour's approach to recognising a Palestinian state before resuming her speech.
But we are now a party in government, not a party of protest. Proud to stand here as your Chancellor, the Chancellor that's increased the minimum wage, a Chancellor that is introducing free breakfast clubs and free school meals, a Chancellor that's overseen 5 cuts to interest rates. That's the difference we make, and that is the difference we make in power, not through protest.
Elsewhere, migrants who want to settle in the UK will face tougher conditions under Labour's new plans. In her conference speech, Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood will say that applicants must speak fluent English, have a clean record and volunteer in their community before gaining indefinite leave to remain. Asylum seekers will also need to be working, paying national insurance and not be on benefits. Labour says it's drawing a clear line between its policy and Reform UK's pledge to scrap settled status entirely. But Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp says that this good citizen test does not go far enough.
We should be increasing the salary thresholds, for example, before people can bring family members into the country. And we should also be getting rid of the Human Rights Act for immigration matters so we can deport everybody, not some people, but everybody who arrives here illegally by small boat, by dinghy over the channel. And we should deport every single foreign criminal as well. But those measures that we Conservatives have developed in detail, Labour has been voting against throughout this year.
Also, at the Labour Party conference, the Foreign Secretary reinstated that Britain stands firm with Ukraine and doubled down on the UK's decision to recognise Palestinian statehood. Ms Cooper said it was the right thing to do to make this, quote, historic decision in recognising Palestine. She also accused Israel of, quote, moral obscenity and said that enough is enough. She used the rest of her speech to praise the Prime Minister, saying that Sir Keir Starmer had restored Britain's reputation abroad and hailed a transformed relationship with the EU and a, quote, ever-growing special relationship with the US. 125 migrants have crossed the Channel in a mega dinghy, the biggest ever number of illegal arrivals on a single boat. Provisional GB News figures show that 350 people made it across on Sunday, taking the weekend total close to 1,300. One child died on Sunday after one dinghy was caught in trouble near Boulogne. This comes less than a day after 3 other migrants lost their lives attempting the crossing. Meanwhile, Chief Secretary to the Treasury James Murray is confident that Labour are doing enough to handle illegal immigration.
Look, we are not going to let up until we have done everything we possibly can to get those numbers down. And look at what the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has been saying. You know, if people are trying to take the mick out of our values or out of our generosity or out of the laws of our country, she takes it head on and says, no, we're going to tackle this, we're going to go at it, we're going to fight for what is right. And that's exactly her approach, and that's exactly the approach of all of us across government. And look, we know there's no silver bullet to this problem. If there was a silver bullet, someone would have found it already. We know that this means you have to go at the problem from every possible angle.
And the car maker, Jaguar Land Rover, has said that it will resume some manufacturing production in the coming days as it continues to deal with the fallout of a major cyber attack. The group said that some sections of its production operations will resume amid a, quote, controlled, phased restart of our operations, having paused all manufacturing since the start of the month after being targeted by hackers. It's acknowledged that there is much more to do, but insisted that recovery is firmly underway. And rail passengers in Yorkshire will soon be able to pay for their tickets by having their phones tracked. From today, a Northern Rail trial between Harrogate and Leeds will see travellers check in via a phone app with GPS tracking when they leave the train. The Department for Transport says that passengers will automatically be charged the lowest fare of the day, part of their plan to simplify ticketing across the network. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in just under half an hour, but quickly, let's check in on the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of the markets this afternoon. The pound will buy you $1.342 and €1.146. The price of gold is £2,843.03 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 9,338 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. Now, Rachel Reeves has been just been delivering her keynote speech. There was a heckler who heckled in the middle, rent-a-heckle, because he seemed to be asking something that potentially the Labour Party would support anyway. Anyway, the conference is live in Liverpool. She addressed various challenges facing the country and spoke about investment and growth ahead of a highly anticipated autumn budget. Well, let's cross live now to Liverpool, and GB News Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood is there for us. So, Tom, tell us more.
Yeah, well, it's not just the deputy political editor here. I'm delighted to say that my boss, Chopper, is here too, our political editor. Now, Chopper, you were there in the room. What did it feel like? Was that a speech of someone who's well-liked in the Labour Party?
I think so. There's a hard job ahead. The key language there, I think, was on the issue of harsh global headwinds. The choices on that not looking easy. The Office of Budget Responsibility comes back next week with its forecast on productivity. We're expecting it to market down, and that means the likelihood of £30 billion to raise through borrowing, cuts or taxation in the November budget. So I think she was trying to be. She defined, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, defined her patriotism as being military, not measured by how much you shout or exclude, but your quiet determination to get on with it. So, but that's kind of, I know you're smiling, but that goes to the heart of who she is. She's not really a kind of Farage-East person. She talks about doing her best for her country, and that's her quiet patriotism. I mean, I'm a kind of 5 times that was mentioned in
yes,
the speech.
No, that was interesting, but zooming in for a moment on that global headwinds line.
That's blaming other the people for the problems we're facing.
This is setting up for what will be a budget where she's going to have to go back on a bunch of promises.
Yes.
I mean, she said that she would only do one big tax-raising budget, and that would be her first. All the rest would be nice because there'd be all this growth in the economy. But we know there isn't any growth in the economy, and so she's got to find, if she wants to spend more money, she's got to take it from more people.
And the worst thing is, Tom, she made that promise to business. The very engines of growth she needs to attract. She told the CBI, and I was there, we won't come back again for any more money. Well, she is a year later. She became a hostage to fortune. Nigel Farage, he was the only name-checked opposition leader. No mention of Kemi Badenoch.
Yeah.
The Tories were mentioned a bit, although Liz Truss is mentioned, but not in a good way.
Yes.
But then it was Nigel Farage, saying he was the single greatest threat to the way of life and living standards of Britons, peddling easy answers, and so it went on. So, and we'll see more of that tomorrow with the PM speech to the conference faithful.
Yeah, interesting, an entire section of that speech dedicated to reform and Nigel Farage, the sort of electioneering point of the speech. But I wonder, given that this is all in anticipation of what is going to happen in the budget and where we're going to be whacked, wasn't it interesting that there wasn't a lot of economics in that speech?
No.
There was a lot of sort of romance and sort of ideas, but on the cold hard numbers or mention of any specific taxes, we didn't hear it.
In fact, this is the speech here. No news in it. All the announcements were made. I thought the most interesting thing, maybe for viewers and listeners of GB News, was to hear how Brexit raising its head again. She said they confirmed for the first time from the Chancellor they are working with the EU to secure a young person's youth mobility deal.
Well, I'm going to be speaking to Nick Thomas-Simmons in just a few minutes' time.
He's ideal, then.
Right here, and he's the guy that's leading up all of these EU negotiations. So perhaps he can shed some light on that.
That's right. So freedom of movement is a big issue. How will you control it? We've got a problem with nearly 1 million people arriving, or 800,000 last year, I think it was, 98% through migration. You know, will this fuel that number? This legal number arriving here. These are choices made by this government. Brexit gives them that choice. Fine, make the choice, but also reap the fury if you are fueling migration.
And there's been so much reporting of Rachel Reeves herself saying that the government needs this deal to have more people coming into the country, so then the Office for Budget Responsibility can score higher growth, even if it's not higher growth per capita. They would score higher growth, and that makes her life easier. I mean, it's strange because the Treasury has often had this line, this lobbying line, with regard to migration, and that can very often run against sort of the electoral instincts of the party.
Well, we're all poorer. The more migrants who come in, generally, we're poorer per capita, per head. That's why people like Nigel Farage and I think increasingly
if the rate of growth is below the rate of growth in migration.
Exactly right, which has been the case in recent years. Yes, I mean, in the OBR, they do write in, don't they, 400,000 a year on average to maintain a degree of economic growth. Until we can wean ourselves off that requirement for labour coming from overseas, we will still be in this position, and we have millions on being paid not to work on benefits. That's a challenge, and we've heard nothing on that at all from the Chancellor, and that's a problem.
That is really interesting. Perhaps the biggest points of this speech are what weren't said as opposed to what was said. We didn't hear anything on freezing tax thresholds, which we expect, a promise she made at the last budget. We expect her to U-turn on that. The Lib Dems are calling this a £10 billion stealth tax raid on ordinary working people. We're expecting that in the budget perhaps now, but she didn't mention national insurance, she didn't mention migration, all of the sort of big issues that perhaps voters would care about. Instead, the biggest policy sort of announcement was about libraries for schools. Very nice, I'm sure, but is that really the biggest priority of the Chancellor of the Exchequer?
It's quite low-key, isn't it? I think because she's quite constrained by what she can do. VAT is the one everyone's watching after the PM refused 7 times to rule out an increase in that, simply said that the manifesto still stands. National insurance, we don't know what's happened there with employers' NICs going up, probably freezing thresholds. The third leg of that stool is VAT. We're watching that very closely.
Well, we'll keep a close eye on that. Chris Hope, thanks indeed for being here, and indeed being just over there for the speech when you were inside. Nana, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tom. Brilliant, brilliant. Loads of stuff happening there. Well, should we go back there and let's speak to GB News' political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who's actually on the conference floor as we speak. Catherine, what's going on there as well? What's been happening? Who have you got with us?
Well, Good afternoon. I was in Rachel Reeves' speech. She was talking about investments all over the country. Quite a lot of those were transport. She did say that the government is committed to Northern Powerhouse Rail, though there was an announcement that we were expecting that we haven't heard. But anyway, I've come over to the Hull Trains stand, and what do we have here? We've got a train driving simulation. I'm going to have a little go live on air. What could possibly go wrong? I might be about to embarrass myself very much. I did have a go at this earlier. I'd just like to say, if you could just have a look at that. I'm second on the leaderboard here. Can we just admire that, please? Okay. So, my glamorous assistant, thank you.
Welcome.
What do we need to do
Okay,
here?
so you're on the controls and you're currently in Edinburgh Waverley platform. We're going to go through to Edinburgh Haymarket. So the right-hand side is your accelerator. And if you nudge that forward, and I think if also we've got Rob on standby as well to help here. So we've got the left hand here to release the brakes. So Rob.
Do I release them?
There we go.
Is that okay?
So what we're seeing now is this is a driver simulator, which is a very slimmed down version of what our drivers will train on. It's harder than it looks, isn't it?
Do you know, it wasn't...
Let go of this one for a second.
It wasn't like this when I did it before.
Now we've got full power to the train.
Off camera.
We should start moving forward.
Here we go. Here we go.
So we've probably had about 50 politicians on this today, and you're second on the leaderboard, which is quite an achievement. It's
Second on the leaderboard. They've had 50 politicians. Let that be noted, please.
And yet on investments, so we run services between King's Cross, Newcastle and Edinburgh. Average fare £42.90. So we offer customers extra choice, great customer experience, and we're celebrating that here at this Labour conference.
Okay, sadly I'm being told to wrap, but thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun. Back to you, Nana.
Thank you very much. Yeah. We leave Catherine going through a black hole. Right. Right, we'll stay with us. Loads more still to come on GB News, 18 minutes after 1 o'clock. But it's your chance to be a brand new winner of a 4-berth motorhome and a package worth over £104,000. Here are the details.
It's our biggest, greatest Great British giveaway to date. Your chance to win a prize package worth over £104,000. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primero motorhome. With thanks to Marquis Leisure, this 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas, sky view roof light, and has all the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure any adventures in your motorhome are taken in style.
For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. The winner will be contacted live on GB News, week commencing 10th November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Lots more coming up on today's show. We'll cross live with lots of coverage from the Labour Party conference.
But after the break, Labour's crackdown on migration is set to be announced. But will it work? Well, I'm delighted to say that joining me will be a man who perhaps knows more about the internal workings of this government's attitudes than anyone else, with the thorny issue of a migration deal with the European Union. I'll be joined by Nick Thomas-Symonds after this. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Now, in the last hour, we heard from the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, where she addressed various challenges facing the country and spoke about investment and growth ahead of our highly anticipated autumn budget. Now, we are expecting to hear imminently from the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, but first, we're joined live by GB News Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood and Paymaster General Nick Thomas-Simmons.
That's right, Nana. Delighted to be joined by Nick Thomas-Simmons, because, Nick, you are really leading the government's negotiation with the European Union.
Yes,
there are a lot of GB News viewers and listeners who are concerned that this deal will have an element of freedom of movement with it for younger people, and that will rise the number of people coming into this country that has already had a huge amount of migration. What do you say to those concerns that our viewers might have?
So, first of all, it isn't freedom of movement. Good to join you, first of all, Tom, on GB News. But we made a promise at the general election that, yes, we would certainly be looking for a better deal than we have at the moment with the European Union to facilitate trade, keep our borders safe, bear down on bills. But that we would not rejoin the customs union, we would not rejoin the single market, we would not go back to freedom of movement. And
well,
that is absolutely
you have rejoined the single market in some ways, not in its entirety, but with agricultural rules, for example. We have to follow whatever the EU decides now. The deal that the Prime Minister struck means that, for example, if the EU bans a pesticide, that has to be banned in the United Kingdom.
Just to unpack two things. First of all, a youth experience scheme would involve both young Brits being able to go to the EU, and yes, young Europeans being able to come here to live and to work, experience different cultures, but it will be capped, it will be controlled, and it will be in the context of the 13 youth mobility schemes we've currently got with countries around the world. So
how would it be capped? Because obviously we've got youth mobility. Interesting that you're calling it an experience scheme rather than a mobility scheme. Can we just call a spade and call it a youth mobility scheme?
You can call it a youth mobility scheme, but it'll certainly be great opportunities to have experiences for young people. But it'll be capped by a number. Okay.
What is that number?
Well, that is to be negotiated, but I see the number in the context of the schemes we already have. But can I just come back as well to the point you've just made about food and drink agreement, because you put a challenge to me about it. we are taking away and going to be taking away fees that are being paid by businesses up and down the country today. So today, to export to the EU, they have to pay £200 for an export health certificate per consignment, £61 for an identity check. You're talking about some lorries, thousands of pounds in fees. This government's going to take away.
But you go and you meet these European negotiators, you sit, you stare in their eyes, and you've rolled over.
Absolutely.
You've rolled over on their demands. Let me just finish the point. Because what you have said is the only way to get rid of these checks is to accept EU rules on what's known as SPS, sanitary and phytosanitary regulations. To accept EU rules. If the EU bans something, it has to be banned here. If the EU change the way that something's regulated, we then have to change. Hasn't that just reversed the entire point of what leaving the European Union was about, which was setting our own rules? Wouldn't it have been better to ask the European Union to say, look, food in the UK is safe. We know it's safe. It's very high standards. Why can't we do mutual recognition?
Absolutely not. And there are businesses up and down the country that are already actually manufacturing, producing to EU standards now, for which we are getting absolutely no benefit. But just to be clear how this process works, first of all, we have an opportunity to shape the rules when they are first proposed, whether it be a directive or a regulation. Secondly, yes, we are taking a sovereign choice to align with another high standards jurisdiction. That is why, in the same month, we secured a free trade deal with India, an economic deal with the United States, and a better deal with the European Union. That's an exercise of sovereignty. And finally, where there are disputes, and there may well be, we have £800 billion of trade every year with the European Union, there will be an arbitration panel. And people talk about the European Court of Justice. The European Court of Justice's role in it is only to do with interpretation of European Union law. The arbitration is not binding on the overall dispute. And you take any free trade agreement, Australia, New Zealand, with India, you always need that mechanism, that independent arbitration mechanism, and we're doing it because it's in our economic interest.
That is a very normal, and obviously in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement we had an arbitration mechanism. What you've done is go further than that, which is to follow EU rules in specific areas. Now that's a trade-off. You say it will facilitate easier trade. I would
take away huge numbers of fees, Tom.
I would put to you that you could have negotiated something better, where the EU would accept our rules and we accept their rules with a mutual recognition agreement.
No, I think what I have negotiated is actually the best possible agreement.
The best possible agreement is to blindly follow EU rules.
No, the best possible agreement, I can tell you, is to take away the fees that businesses are paying.
By following EU rules.
The consequence, let's be absolutely clear about this. If the position, and by the way, I mean, in credit to you, Tom, you're actually engaging in the argument after the deal's been signed. But Kemi Badenoch said she was reversing this deal before she'd even seen it, as did Nigel Farage. And the consequence of that is what they are saying, is that businesses will have to again pay the fees that we are going to take away. £200 for export health certificates, £61 for identity checks. If you get chosen for sampling, we're talking like well over £1,000. Now, I have a deal that takes those checks away, that facilitates trade.
No, you have done that by rolling over to the EU's demands.
No, by rolling over to the EU's demands. But what the Conservatives and Reform are going to have to explain to businesses up and down the country in the agri-food sector is why they want to reimpose those charges. And by the way, I enjoy this debate and I'm going to look forward to that debate as well.
I mean, that is fascinating because, of course, if the EU rules are going to be enforced here, are farmers going to be particularly happy if the EU decides to ban a pesticide, decides to do something anti-growth and over-regulatory when it comes to the agricultural sector, which we know the EU does. That's their entire modus operandi. That's the common agricultural policy writ large.
Tom, there are things as of today, British bangers, for example, certain types of shellfish that we cannot export to the European Union, that we will be able to export again. And my message to the agri-food sector is that I want to see British produce that I'm really proud of on plates right around the European Union, and they are going to be able to do that to export
if they follow
more
EU
easily and cheaply. But in most sectors that's already happening. Shall
we park agriculture for a second? Because migration is something that a lot of people would be concerned about. We started the conversation with it. You said there will be a cap with this migration deal with the European
Union. It's not a migration deal, it's a youth mobility deal.
A youth mobility migration deal.
For a specific period of time, people are not going to be able to come and bring dependents or claim benefits or anything like that. It's a very specific form of scheme. It is not
Can we just hash out at the end of this interview some numbers? Because you say there'll be a specific period of time and there will be a specific cap.
Yes.
Can you give me either of those numbers today?
Well, obviously not, because I'm just about to go and negotiate those things.
You can tell us what you would like to see. Is it a 1-year deal, a 2-year deal, a 3-year deal?
These are subject to negotiations. I'm obviously not going to cut across it. Much as I respect coming on your show, Tom, I can't negotiate via you with the European Union.
But you can tell us what you want. When Theresa May went to negotiate with Brussels, she gave a big speech saying, this is what I would like to achieve. Yeah. Can you tell me that today?
Of course I can. And I've already given you that answer.
No, you haven't. You haven't told me what you'd like the cap to be, and you haven't told me how long the time of people being able to move to the United Kingdom would be for.
No, I haven't given those two specific points.
Those are the only two numbers I've asked for.
What I have done, though, is told you what I'm looking for, which is a deal that is in the context of the deals we already have. Nobody says we've got freedom of movement with Uruguay. Nobody says we've got freedom of movement with Australia. Nobody says we've got freedom of movement with Andorra, but they are all countries that we have existing youth mobility schemes with. And that is the shape. I've talked about a smart, controlled youth mobility scheme. Yeah. You can see them operating in practice. I don't think your viewers would describe any of those things as freedom of movement.
Well, the remarkable thing about the Australian deal is it's two-way. It's very balanced,
just
right?
As this one's going to be. Just as this one will be two-way.
Will this one really be balanced when we know that lots of countries, particularly in Eastern Europe, have a much lower level of economic development than the United Kingdom? And what we historically saw when we were members of the European Union was the flow was basically entirely one way. Far more people came into the United Kingdom than left.
With respect, there was no cap. So the cap obviously does make it balanced. And I want to talk about this in that respect as well, because you've quite rightly asked the question about young Europeans coming here. But I want to make the case as well for the opportunity for young Brits to go, live, travel.
What is a young Brit? Am I a young Brit? I'm 29 years old. Would I be able to travel?
I think you would qualify as young.
If I was 6 years older, would I be able to qualify?
Well, that again is subject to the negotiation at the moment.
So, okay, look, we don't know how old young people are. We don't know what the cap will be. We don't know how many years this will be going on. I mean, is this another situation where you're going to go over to Europe, sit down with your opposite numbers, and roll over again, just like you did on agriculture?
I haven't rolled over on agriculture. I've got a great deal for agriculture. But I'm obviously not going to be able to give you the conclusion of a negotiation before I've actually conducted it. So I'm sure you would appreciate that, Tom. But what I will certainly come out of this with is a deal that's in our national interest, that will give young people here in the UK. I'm happy to count you as young for these purposes. Who knows? You might want to take advantage of the youth mobility scheme. Who knows? You might do extremely well in a career in the EU. Who knows? But listen, I will come back with one that's in the national interest, that's a smart, controlled scheme in the context of the youth mobility schemes you already have, and I'm going to be very proud to carry out that work.
OK, well, we haven't yet got those numbers. We will keep pressing you for answers on that. But Nick Thomas-Symonds, thanks indeed for joining us here live at the heart of the Labour Party conference.
Thank you very much, Tom. Brilliant, very good. He didn't manage to tell you the full details, but it's good to see you pin him down. Right, so that's Tom Harwood. He's live at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. We'll bring you more live coverage of the conference. But first, let's get your latest headlines with Sophia Hill.
Nana, thank you. Very good afternoon. These are the top stories at 1:30. Chancellor Rachel Reeves' speech at the Labour Party conference was interrupted by a pro-Palestinian heckler. The Chancellor was setting out measures Labour had taken as the member of the audience began shouting about the, quote, mass starvation of Palestinians. Ms Reeves defended Labour's approach.
But we are now a party in government, not a party of protest.
Elsewhere, the Home Secretary will unveil tougher conditions for migrants who want to settle in the UK. She says applicants must speak fluent English, have a clean record and volunteer in their community before gaining indefinite leave to remain. Car maker Jaguar Land Rover has said that it will resume some manufacturing production over the coming days as it continues to deal with the fallout of a major cyber attack. They'll start a, quote, controlled and phased restart, but have acknowledged that there's much to be done. And rail passengers in Yorkshire will soon be able to pay for tickets by having their phones tracked. From today, travellers will be able to check in via a phone app and with the GPS tracking when they leave the train station. Those are the headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
You can now watch GB News live across the United States of America and the world on Truth Plus. Scan the QR code to find out more, or visit gbnews.com/truth.
Thank you, Sophia. Lots more coming up on today's show. Labour's crackdown on migration is set to be announced, but will it work? We'll be discussing that. All of that and more. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Fog clearing this morning and then a fine day for most of us. Some rain in the northwest, so not entirely dry across the United Kingdom. That rain courtesy of these weather fronts that are just going to brush into the northwest during the rest of Monday, thickening up the cloud across Scotland and Northern Ireland, bringing some higher cloud to parts of Wales and the southwest of England, so turning the sunshine a little more hazy. However, we keep the bright skies for the east of Scotland into eastern, central and southeastern England. Sunny spells, temperatures doing well, 19 Celsius, but not feeling so pleasant where we've got the cloud thickening and those outbreaks of rain pushing into parts of western and central Scotland, northwest England and Northern Ireland, along with a freshening breeze. But across England and Wales, it's a largely fine end to the day. Clear spells as the sun goes down. A few spots of rain there for Snowdonia, for example, and northwest England. Northern Ireland also 1 or 2 spots of rain as the cloud thickens, but the more persistent rain will be reserved for the west coast of Scotland and parts of northern Sutherland and Caithness. Into the evening, and those outbreaks of rain continue on and off for the north and west of Scotland. Northern Ireland sees a bit more rain coming along overnight, but for much of the rest of the UK, it's a dry night with clear spells, and as a result, along with the light winds, temperatures will fall away. Another chilly night to come for the south and southeast. A few mist and fog patches to wake up to on Tuesday morning. These will clear through the morning and then plenty of sunny spells once again for the south and southeast. But for Scotland, Northern Ireland, for northwest England and for parts of North Wales, we're going to see a cloudy day with, again, light outbreaks of rain on and off through the day. A breezy day for many, but it's going to turn much wetter and much windier in the far northwest by Wednesday.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the M6 southbound between Junction 11 and 10A in Staffordshire, a vehicle fire is causing significant delays, with one lane closed. Expect a 30-minute delay. The M40 southbound between Junction 10 and 9 in Oxfordshire faces 50-minute delays due to a broken-down vehicle, with 2 lanes closed. On the A38 westbound in Devon, a collision has closed 1 lane, causing 10-minute delays. And on the trains, major disruptions are reported on East Midlands Railway between Luton and London St Pancras International. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain, 9:39 minutes after 1 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. In her conference speech this afternoon, Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood will unveil tough new rules for migrants, from higher English standards to community service, before they can stay in the UK. Labour also want to double the wait for permanent status from 5 to 10 years. And this follows Sir Keir Starmer's branding Nigel Farage's plan to scrap indefinite leave to remain as racist and immoral. So joining us to discuss this, Associate Editor at The Daily Sceptic, Laurie Wastel. Laurie, I'm sort of looking at Shabana Mahmood's plans, and they're not that dissimilar to the ones of Nigel Farage, given, granted, Nigel Farage said that his could be applied retrospectively, but they're quite similar, aren't they, really?
Yes, indeed. And I think I'm good to be here with you, Nana, talking about this very, very important topic that I think will matter to a lot of GB News viewers. I think the fact is that the government has actually conceded the point that there have been far too many visas issued, mostly under the last government, with that what's now known as the Boris wave of migration, and that this is going to be causing an enormous fiscal problem for us down the line as those individuals are set to receive indefinite leave to remain and all of the benefits that that entails. And so the government itself published this white paper back in May looking at this and pledging something really quite similar, which, as you said, is potentially extending the requirement of years lived in Britain to receive indefinite leave to remain from 5 years to 10. Now, there is a question of whether or not that will actually be applied to that Boris wave, but certainly this is the thinking there. And so, as you highlight, it's completely extraordinary that Keir Starmer has been coming out with this rhetoric about reforms policy, which is marginally different in the details, but basically they are both designed to tackle the same thing and to put that conditionality on indefinite leave to remain, or whether it's citizenship or anything else. And so for him to be denouncing that in this way, while Shabana Mahmood announces this policy that's so similar this afternoon, is frankly farcical.
Because it makes perfect sense that if you want to be in this country, you need to be able to speak English, you need to be able to support yourself, you need to be able to support any dependents that come with you. You can't have a criminal record, perfectly reasonable. And if you have a particular job that is really like a skill that is required, I think it was an ASSV visa that Nigel suggested, a shortage of skills visa, then you could come in and there'd be different rules for you, you know. So there is not much difference in this. One of the questions I do have with this is, will someone who is not happy with the situation or the proposal that they may have to leave be able to claim legal aid and things like that?
Yes, that is an interesting one. And there are certainly a lot of different technicalities to be worked out about the policy. But certainly what we will be seeing is in that form of legal aid, perhaps, but also in general, a lot of resistance to this kind of policy, potentially from Labour. And I think that's very interesting, particularly the backbenchers. So we have seen, so there's going to be a consultation soon, where supposedly later this year, perhaps Mahmood will announce it this afternoon. And it's interesting, actually, they've been delaying that for quite a while already. But even still, there have been a couple of petitions to Parliament about this policy, and Labour backbenchers have had the opportunity to make their feelings known about it. And, well, they're very strongly against now, as we might expect. And so it's kind of the same rhetoric that Keir Starmer has been using about reforms policy that these Labour MPs will have been using about the government's own policy. And one possibility for this speech this afternoon, I mean, we've just seen Rachel Reeves be heckled over Palestine. And we know that at Labour Party conference, this is often happening. So we could see someone heckling her using the very words of Keir Starmer against her.
Wow. And very, very briefly then, do you think that Nigel Farage deliberately put this in the ring to force Labour's hand? Because, of course, these 800 potential people who could complain, could claim this indefinite leave to remain, would be obviously outside his remit to change if he does win the next election.
Well, certainly, yes. He's really changed the conversation here on migration. He's taken a clear stand that this is not actually that much harsher than what Labour is doing, but he's saying this is a key issue and we're going to plant our flag on it. And Labour really don't know how to position themselves here, because they have to get a grip with it, but it's something that's very unnatural for them to do as a party, and they're going to end up upsetting a lot of their base. So he's played his cards very well here. After a whole summer focusing on illegal migration, now we're in autumn and sort of moving the conversation on. It is very wise.
All right, Laurie Wastell, thank you very much. He's the Associate Editor at the Daily Skeptic. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. We'll have more live coverage from the Labour Party conference and from pubs to restaurants. The industry says that it's being taxed out. Is Labour crushing hospitality? We'll speak to the CEO of UK Hospitality. But first, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
There's still plenty of fine and warm weather across most of the Mediterranean, but it's a different story across parts of Spain, and in particular parts of southeast Spain and the Balearic Islands, where we're going to see some particularly heavy and persistent rain through the day on Tuesday. Flooding is possible in places and warnings are in place as well. Scattered showers across parts of Italy, the Balkans and Greece, but many places staying dry with some sunny spells. And through the next few days, it stays largely fine with a mixture of sunny spells and cloud and temperatures around average.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Liz Mitchell, MBE, gracing us with her presence on the sofa this morning. Liz, so good to have you with us.
I am happy to be here.
You have the most incredible voice, the voice of a generation, the whole disco era. It is down to you. What do you think has made your songs so timeless? I mean, everybody knows them, don't they?
Everybody knows them.
Everybody.
One thing I'm very grateful for is the temper of our music, because it seems to be very friendly, warming, and even our slow songs. I was playing one just the other day for my 2-year-old grandson, and he said, more. I was so happy.
I'm with him on that. There's a real sense with your music, though, that it is uplifting.
Yes.
And you feel happy listening to it. I mean, despite whatever it is you're singing about, almost, it's just there's a joy to it.
Yes, and that is really a gift, I think, that most artists would want to have, is that when they make their music that is lasting and that is bringing happiness to people. Because for me, that's the whole point of singing. You know, you should be able to make the people you're entertaining feel happy, hear something good, forget the pain for a moment and just want to dance and just feel good.
And Boney M music is all over TikTok, isn't it? It's being remixed all the time. How do you feel watching your music being reinvented like that?
It is really wonderful. This has been going on since the 90s, even before the 90s, people were remixing our songs. So it's the uniqueness of the vocals, because that's what is given to them, just the plain vocals, and then they put new music on it, and it still sounds like Boney M.
The People's Channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. The Labour Party are set to try and restore the faith of business owners at this year's conference, following their decision to increase national insurance in the previous budget. Labour gained strong backing from major businesses in 2024 in the election, branding themselves as the natural party of business. Joining me now is GB News' Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood, and co-presenter of this show. And he's joined by the CEO of UK Hospitality, Alan Simpson. Tom.
That's right. So let's just dive straight into it, Alan. The Chancellor's just spoken, just a few metres away over there. What was in there for UK hospitality?
Not a great deal. I thought it was quite a good speech. She spoke very well. She's finding her voice. But did it have the content that we need in advance of the budget to start to repair the job losses which we saw after last year's budget? No. I think we were hoping to see a bit more on tax, on regulation, on a plan to try and get those 100,000 jobs which have been lost back into the workplace. And I don't think we saw that today.
Now, as you say, 100,000 jobs lost in the hospitality sector since the last budget. is that mainly attributable to the decisions that the Chancellor made?
Yeah, absolutely it is. If you look at the year's budget before, in the 6 months after that, the sector gained, let's say, 20,000 jobs. In the 6 months after last year's budget, it lost 60,000 jobs. So it's a direct, just binary change in the well-being of the sector. And it's worth saying that these are exactly the sorts of jobs that you'd think a Labour Chancellor would want to support. They're jobs of people working part-time, jobs of people at the start of their careers, and they're jobs across the country, but they were lost, and they were lost very simply because of the budget.
And because of the threshold change, to get technical for a second,
Sure.
the threshold change in national insurance, it wasn't just that national insurance was raised, it's that national insurance was starting to apply on people with much lower salaries as well.
Exactly.
And that, for hospitality in particular, where people might be on part-time work or might be on the very start of their careers, that was perhaps whacking your sector more than anyone else.
Precisely. So it used to be the case that you could work a Saturday and Sunday before your employer had to pay national insurance. Now it's just a Sunday. So a lot of those part-time jobs are just unaffordable. But it also affects the pay of the people themselves. So if you earned, let's say, £25,000, last year's budget cost you half of your pay rise, whereas if you earn £150,000, it only costs you about 20% of your pay rise. So it's a direct cost where the less you earn, the more you are hit. That's a very strange thing to see. We were hoping to see some news today about some solutions to fix it, but we didn't.
That is really, really interesting. That perhaps direct decisions that the Chancellor made. She would say, of course, to fill the black hole that she inherited, but of course there's now another black hole in the country's finances, and I suppose the fear now is that there will be another tax-raising budget and that more taxes could be placed on businesses like those that you represent.
Yeah, I thought the most interesting thing she said today wasn't in her speech, it was in her morning media round, where she was asked a question about VAT. And she said, look, we all know the world has changed, which does suggest that they're opening the door to something new. The big news at conference has been around Jaguar Land Rover.
Yes.
Jaguar Land Rover employed 30,000 people, incredible British success story, big employer. But 30,000 people, that is less than a third of the job losses just in hospitality since the budget.
Wow.
And I think it is worth asking why it is that consistently we are seeing jobs in hospitality treated with less attention than jobs elsewhere in the economy.
That is a really stark message, that 100,000 job losses. If you wanted to see one policy out of the budget, what would it be?
Support for high streets. So business rates are a tax on running community businesses. Very strange thing. The tax system incentivises you setting up a dark kitchen and closing your shop or your restaurant. We should change that.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Alan, for talking through everything there. It seems like that we covered a huge amount of ground, but I hope that the hospitality sector does see some greater light, because it's been a really, really tough time in hospitality. Alan Simpson there, the CEO of UK Hospitality. Back to you, Nana.
Thank you very much, Tom. Great interview there as well. Right, well, listen, lots of you have been getting in touch about this conference. Ronald said, can Labour please tell us when they can stand on their own 2 feet? At the moment, they seem to need the crutch provided by constantly blaming the last government. He said babies start in their 2nd year. Mind you, Harry is still struggling. Boom, boom. Very good, Ronald. Thank you very much. Listen, and loads of you getting in touch as well about all the topics that have been discussed. gbnews.com/your say. Sunjid said, bless, all heard with proving Labour is different than the Conservative Party. She didn't mention Kemi because Kemi noticed Reeves was close to tears in PMQs. Possibly. Right, stay with us though. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up, so do not go anywhere. More coverage from the conference where Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson will be speaking imminently. First, let's get some weather.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's a fine day for most of us with some sunny spells, but increasingly damp in the far northwest, most notably Western Scotland, where we do have a weather front brushing past, and this weather front will increasingly bring wet weather to the northwest of the UK during the next few days. But for the time being, it's light and patchy outbreaks of rain for the west of Scotland, but also northern parts of Scotland, and overnight Northern Ireland seeing some splashes of rain. Elsewhere, mostly dry, clear spells continuing for central, southern and eastern parts of the UK, and with light winds. Temperatures falling away, mid to high single figures generally, and a few mist and fog patches, just like Monday morning, across the south of England. But towards the north, where it's a windier start to the day, a lot of cloud cover for Scotland. Those outbreaks of rain continuing to push into Orkney and Shetland, also sporadic outbreaks of rain for much of Scotland, northwest England, Northern Ireland. So on and off rain, mostly light, not particularly impactful at this stage. Wales seeing some cloud, 1 or 2 light showers, but for much of England, away from the northwest, it's a bright start once those mist and fog patches have cleared. Plenty of sunny spells for a time through the south and southeast, although the cloud will build into the afternoon. So for many places, it is a rather cloudy day, and that cloud will be thickest across northwestern parts of the UK. Again, a keen breeze and those outbreaks of rain on and off. Warm enough, though, in the southeast, 20 Celsius, more like mid to high teens further northwest, although eastern Scotland seeing the potential for 18 or 19 Celsius. Then it's all change as we go into Tuesday night, a deterioration as heavier rain pushes into Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. That's the start of a very wet spell for Western Scotland in particular midweek. Elsewhere, drier but breezy.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's our biggest Great British giveaway to date. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas and has all of the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that any adventures you take in your new motorhome are taken in style. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 2 o'clock on Monday, the 29th of September. I'm Nana Akua, and Tom Harwood is at the Labour conference live in Liverpool. Now, coming up, Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson will be taking to the spotlight at the conference any moment now. But first, let's cross live to Liverpool, because in a moment we'll be speaking to Tom Harwood and find out more about it. Of course, Bridget Phillipson, being the Education Secretary, put in place that policy charging VAT on private school bills. Of course, private schools do still pay VAT, but not on the bills. She initiated the policy in January. In the middle of the term, people argue that she did that in order to maximise the revenue, because obviously some parents didn't want their kids to be leaving the school that they were in, so kept them in for the next term and the next term until the year ended. However, the impact of that policy has been heavily felt. There have been a number of private schools closing, as well as those state school pupils who are now state school pupils struggling to find places in state schools. So it will be interesting to hear how Bridget Phillipson deals with that, because, of course, she also initiated the free breakfast clubs in schools. A lot of kids don't really use a lot of the breakfast clubs anyway, and there's been more talk of other things that she might be putting into place as well. There's been quite a few of you getting in touch. gbnews.com/your say on the thoughts of what's been going on in the conference. John says, just had a chat with one of my neighbours. She's 70. She's getting upset about benefit cuts. Transpires she hasn't worked for decades, nor now have her daughters, 4 of them, nor have many of her grandkids or her stepkids. The litany goes on. If the names mentioned, I gave up on them 25, or we got to 25. All manner of excuses. All right, so keep them coming. gbnews.com/your say. But first, let's cross live to Liverpool. Joining me now is my co-host and Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood, and GB News' Political Editor, Christopher Hope. Tom, what more can you tell us? What's going on there?
Absolutely. We're waiting for Bridget Phillipson to start speaking now. She's not only the Education Secretary, but she's also one of the 2 candidates in the deputy leadership race. There's some really interesting internal stuff going on here. I'm delighted to be joined by the one and only Chopper. Chopper, what are we going to expect from Bridget Phillipson? This is going to be an election pitch.
Yes, because she's here because she's the Education Secretary. That's why Lucy Powell, her opponent to be Deputy Leader, won't be given the same idea of speaking from the platform in the Labour conference.
Well, Chopper, she's just started to speak, so let's listen in.
Thank you, conference. Sometimes people tell me, as I'm sure they tell you, that there's not enough hope in our story. Not enough ambition, not enough vision. So let me start with a story about Alan, an FE teacher I met back at his home in Sunderland. Alan had taught for over 30 years. The lads that came through his classes hadn't come from much. For many, Alan was the first father figure they had ever known. For many, their background dictated their destiny. No one had given those lads a chance. Now, so many of you know that story. For so many of us, that is our story. But Alan was different. Alan gave them a chance. He didn't just teach them a trade. He taught them to believe in themselves when they had given up. He taught them the power of opportunity, of education, to give them the freedom to choose their own path in life. And one day in the supermarket, Alan told me he got a tap on the shoulder. It was one of those students, one of those lost boys that Alan had nurtured, one of the many he had given the chance to train on a building project started by the last Labour government. The years had passed by, but the path Alan set him on had brought him success. He'd worked his way up through a local firm, and Alan's guiding hand meant he could start his own business, take on jobs not just in the northeast but further afield. It meant that he could buy his first house for him and for his wife. Without Alan, he said, he just wouldn't have made it. He would have ended up, like too many young people in our country, denied the freedom to choose their own path. And that story is the story of education, of opportunity, of the change Labour brings, of government not as something to be feared, but to be welcomed, not something to be cleared out of our lives, but as a force for good for each of us and for all of us. And our Labour government is our chance to show that our country, with its proud history, has a bright future too. A chance at last to turn our values, equality, fairness, social justice, into action. A chance to show that education means opportunity for each of us and for all of us. Because extending opportunity, above all, means spreading the freedoms that for too long were the privilege of the lucky few. That is my mission. It is our shared mission. The freedom to choose your own path in life. The freedom to succeed, whatever your background, whoever your parents, and wherever you are from. The freedom to do the work that you love. Freedom from ignorance. Freedom from poverty. Freedom from fear. The freedom to understand our culture and others. The freedom to spend time with your family and with your children. Because it is Labour, only Labour, that sees the role of government as empowering, as liberating. Those are our values, that is our socialism, and that is our dream. And conference, something else. It is only Labour that sees education, sees those opportunities as about the people of tomorrow, not just the workers of tomorrow. The artists and the scientists, the teachers and campaigners, the match goers and the museum goers, carers and parents, the activists, the volunteers, the voters. The Britain that we are building is a Britain rich for them, rich in every way and rich for their families. That is our vision and that is our dream. And conference, in a darkening world, I am proud that our Labour Party, the greatest vehicle for social justice this country has ever known, is in government and is delivering so much of that dream. And just look at what we have already achieved together. Free breakfast clubs rolling out across the country, hundreds of new school-based nurseries opening from this autumn, Best Start family hubs, reviving Sure Start for a new generation, and ended the tax breaks which private schools enjoyed. New technical excellence colleges open for learning, 30 hours free childcare for working parents, tackling top-up fees in our nurseries, thousands of new teachers recruited, the largest ever uplift in the early years pupil premium, turning the tide on school absence with 5 million more days at school last year, opening up access to tens of thousands more apprenticeships, proper pay rises for our teachers, 2 years running, promises made, promises kept, our values in action. And so much more for us to look forward to. Gender pay gap action plans coming soon. New rules to control the cost of school uniform so they make children smart, not poor. New controls on profiteering in children's social care where the market fails. And a new voice for school support staff through our path-breaking employment rights bill. And free school meals for another 500,000 children, the change that we are bringing so our children have a brighter future. Conference, this is what we have already done together, fixing the foundations, clearing up the mess that the Tories left behind. And we are moving to tackle the generational challenges in our system, supporting children with SEND to succeed, with fresh investment and new facilities, supporting their parents, their families, doing all that they can to get their best for their children with additional needs, while Reform tell them that their children are just badly behaved, that their parenting is poor. Turning the tide on how working class children do at school, because no one should be left behind because of their background. And when people tell me, as I'm sure they tell you, that there's not enough hope, Not enough ambition, not enough ambition. I say, come with me to a primary school. Come with me to a new breakfast club. Come with me to a nursery. See the light in children's eyes as Labour's choices light their world. See the relief in their parents' faces that they have at last a government driving down costs and on their side. See the way staff talk about having, after 14 long years, a government that backs them and trusts them. And last week, I was in Kettering, one of the seats that we won last year, visiting over 100 children at their free breakfast club. I saw the difference that we are making. Calmer classrooms, happier children, higher standards. Staff who see the change, parents who feel it, and children's life chances transformed. Conference, those little smiles don't just melt our hearts, they light the way. They remind us that in this country, the progress we are making, the change that we are bringing, that the hope and optimism that took each and every one of us into politics are a beacon through dark times, a light on the hill for the values that sustain us all. But Conference, for that hope to be sustained, change must come and people must feel it. 3 years ago, stood on this stage, I promised you that we would deliver free breakfast clubs in every primary school. Last year, I told you the first wave would begin this year. Conference, we have now served 2.5 million free breakfasts to England's children, setting them up to succeed. Giving their parents work choices and our children life chances. And this year, I am proud to tell you the full national rollout of our free breakfast clubs will begin from April, with more schools joining then and even more from September. Our values in action, the heart and soul of Labour.
So you're listening to Bridget Phillipson, the current Education Secretary, and she's also vying for Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. Well, let's speak to our GB News political editor and co-presenter, who is joined by Labour MP for Crewe and Nantwich, Conor Naismith. Tom, back over to you.
Absolutely. Conor Naismith is with me now. Conor, you're backing Lucy Powell rather than Bridget Phillipson. In fact, did you nominate Lucy Powell?
I did.
Why did you choose that to sort of go for the Lucy Powell direction, seen as perhaps more of an outsider as opposed to Bridget Phillipson, Cabinet Minister, closer to the Prime Minister?
Yeah, look, so you're absolutely right. I did nominate Lucy Powell, and I think it's important to say from the outset, I don't think that this deputy leadership election has to be a divisive affair. I think both candidates are perfectly qualified to do the job, but ultimately I decided to back Lucy Powell because I think, if we're saying that the deputy leader of the party is not going to be the deputy prime minister, that gives us a really good opportunity to define that role. And for me personally, I think that should be somebody who sits outside of collective responsibility of the government and can act as a link between the wider party and the movement and the government. And I think Lucy can do that really well.
Because it's true to say the wider party and the movement has quite a lot of gripes with this current government. Things aren't going well, are they?
Well, I think, Lucy is a great candidate for bringing those sides together, and she's been really, really clear that it's important we can have those discussions, those difficult conversations, and that doesn't equal disloyalty or disunity. In fact, it provides a healthy environment for the government to move forward.
Of course, she's quite close to Andy Burnham, both Mancunians, both Manchester area MPs. Has Andy Burnham been disloyal over the course of this week? He's been saying things like there's a climate of fear in the Labour Party.
So I think, look, Andy has made a number of comments over the last week, and he's perfectly entitled to do so. I think that's important to say. And actually, I do agree that this is not about being disloyal. I think it's important that we can have an open and frank discussion about the way the government moves forward into the future. Andy is doing a fantastic job in Greater Manchester as the mayor there, and his track record speaks for itself. So I think, you know, it's important that we listen to those voices outside of government and outside of Westminster, as well as in Westminster.
There are quite a lot of people at this conference who'd quite like Andy Burnham not to be the Mayor of Greater Manchester. And that's not because they think he's doing a bad job, it's because they think he'd do a better job at the Prime Minister's job.
Well, look, I think that clearly there are no seats up for discussion at this moment in time, and I think the question as to where Andy contributes most to the future of the country and the future of the government are a question for Andy. But
he seems to have made his marker pretty clear over the course of the last 7 days.
Well, I think actually what Andy's been really clear about is that the contributions that he's making to the discussion at the moment are about trying to support the government, are about trying to make it better.
The contributions that Andy Burnham is supporting the government. I mean, he gave an interview to The Telegraph where he more or less declared his desire to become the Prime Minister.
I don't think he did do that. I have to say, I don't think he did do that. And it comes
he
back
was
to
asked, would you like to take Keir Starmer's job? And he said, that's for others to decide. You and I both know that's politicians speak for saying, I want to be the Prime Minister, I would do a better job than Keir Starmer.
Well, there is no vacancy for Prime Minister, and there is no clear route to somebody who isn't currently an MP to become Prime Minister. So I think that that's, you know, a kind of hypothetical discussion. All I'm saying is that the comments that Andy has been making over the last week, I don't take as disloyalty. I think that Andy is genuinely trying to contribute to a discussion about how the government moves forward into the future in a more positive direction, and I think that that's something that we should listen to and embrace, not necessarily shout down or criticise.
Now, all the polls suggest that your candidate, Lucy Powell, is going to win this deputy leadership election. Of course, the election isn't over, not by a long shot, but if you were to take a bet, you'd say Lucy's going to win it. What does that say about where the party is on her close friend Andy Burnham too?
I think it is wrong, frankly, to try and draw too close a kind of link between the deputy leadership election that we're having at the moment, which, by the way, is between two women, one named Lucy, one named Bridget, and a conversation about two men, one named Andy and one named Keir. Lucy is standing on her own platform, in which she's making her case to members, and I don't think that there is any link between those two different discussions that are taking place. Clearly, the polls of members suggest that Lucy's campaign has a lot of momentum behind it. It's doing really well, and I welcome that, but it's not over till it's over, and we'll see what happens when the members have their say.
OK, well, let's just take a vibe check now. Each year, I have the privilege of going around to all the party conferences and sort of getting a feeling for how the rank and file members of a party are feeling. What would you say the vibe is of the rank and file Labour members at this party conference?
I think there is a recognition that the first year in government has been difficult. I mean, government ministers are saying this, acknowledging that what we inherited was really, really difficult set of circumstances, and that we are trying to lay the groundwork for a better country in the future. So there's an acknowledgement that it's been difficult, but an optimism that things can improve, and they will improve, given the positive steps that the government has put in place in the first year.
Do you really sense optimism here?
Yes, I do, genuinely. I think, government is about the hard yards, taking the difficult decisions, sometimes unpopular decisions, that will bear fruit down the road, that people will then start to feel, take our mission to kind of build 1.5 million new homes. There's so many millions of young people out there who need a home of their own. And
it's a mission that the Housing Secretary has admitted is not going well so far.
Well, it's a very ambitious target, and we're right to have ambitious targets, and that's why we've taken steps through planning reform and other measures that the Conservatives, frankly, ducked over 14 years. We're not going to duck those difficult decisions, because we know that by taking them, they will deliver the benefits in the future that people will see and feel for themselves, and will have confidence that the government did the right thing.
I mean, it's strange to pick on housing as this big sort of win for the government. Yes, there's an ambition there for 1.5 million homes, but the number of homes that are being built, I mean, it's less than a third of the target so far.
But that's why it's important to reflect that we're taking the decisions now and making the changes in our system that will enable us to unlock greater numbers of houses being delivered and infrastructure projects and all sorts of other things. that will deliver economic growth that people will feel.
Well, I suppose these will be targets that we can come back perhaps next year or the year after and look over and check on that progress. But Conor, thanks so much for being with us here at the GB News stand at Labour Party conference. Conor Naismith there, the Labour MP for Crewe and Nantwich.
Thank you very much, Tom. If you just tuned in, welcome. This is Good Afternoon Britain. It's just fast approaching 20 minutes after 2 o'clock. If you're in search of a brand new motorhome, though, worth over, well, the whole package worth over £104,000, here are the details that you need.
It's our biggest, greatest Great British giveaway to date. Your chance to win a prize package worth over £104,000. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primero motorhome. With thanks to Marquis Leisure, this 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas, sky view roof lights, and has all the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure any adventures in your motorhome are taken in style.
For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. The winner will be contacted live on GB News, week commencing 10th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. We'll have more live coverage at the Labour Party conference. Plus, GPs threaten strike action over online booking. Patients say it's lazy. Wes Streeting says it's absurd. All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Fast approaching 25 minutes after 2 o'clock. Let's return now to the Labour Party conference in Liverpool, where Prime Minister and Justice Secretary David Lammy is expected to address party members very shortly. But first, let's cross live to joining us now, Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood and GB News' Political Editor Christopher Hope. So, Tom, what else is happening there? Tell us more.
That's right, Nana. We are expecting... Yes, we're expecting David Lammy to start speaking in a little bit of time. He'll be, of course, one of those interesting speeches after his demotion from Foreign Secretary to Justice Secretary. But there's someone else who has been making waves at this conference so far, and that's the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, Darren Jones. Chopper, what's Darren Jones said?
So what's happening is these ministers fan out around the broadcasting studios over lunchtime. Darren Jones has spoken to Sky News. He was asked, what does it mean when the PM says in his interview over the weekend that the manifesto stands on not increasing, for example, VAT? And he says this, well, the manifesto stands because decisions haven't been taken yet. So he was asked, would you rule out cutting VAT or income tax? I'm not ruling anything out, I'm not ruling anything in. Today, Tom, the manifesto stands. Now, we think the manifesto is a 5-year commitment.
Yes.
That is it's almost like a biblical text that can't be changed during that 5-year period.
And it has constitutional power as well, because if something's in the manifesto, there's a convention that the House of Lords has to allow it. If it's not in the manifesto, then the House of Lords can play silly.
So it has a force of law in our world of politics. Now, for him to say that the manifesto stands today is setting hairs running this lunchtime in the conference, because everyone's wondering how will Richard Reeves fill this £30 billion black hole.
And this would suggest that if the manifesto stands today, it might not stand tomorrow.
Well, in a week's time, because next week the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, comes back with its verdict on productivity, is expected to mark that number down, and that means that the black hole, the figure needs to fill it with borrowing or cuts or tax rises, will get bigger.
And this is really significant because the productivity numbers, it's sort of 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, this sort of stuff is billions, potentially tens of billions of pounds.
And that's indeed why Rachel Reeves mentioned the idea of youth movement, because that was allowing 18 to 30-year-olds to come and go between the UK and EU, because that allows her to price in a bigger increase in economic activity.
She was almost asking the OBR to take account of that, as very often the Treasury does with migration. They sort of say, more migrants, more GDP, good.
She started in Saturday's Times saying this, and for me it's very Trumpian, because she is putting public pressure on an independent body which advises the Treasury. She's basically trying to say to them, please generously allow some economic growth from these numbers coming across. That is what Donald Trump would do, by the way.
Yes.
She would deny that, but it is putting pressure in public on an independent Treasury body.
That's such an interesting point. But the news line from Darren Jones is, in effect, the manifesto can only be guaranteed unless and until the OBR says that the economic situation of the country is poor.
This is really silly of him to say this, because right now the talk of the conference is all about how you fix this budget. To say that, he's walking into a big story.
Gosh, big goings on here. Well, back to you, Nana.
Thank you very much, Tom. Right, well, let's go to GB News' political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who's also on the floor at the Labour Party conference. Catherine, what's happening where you are?
Yes. Hello. Well, we've had a lot of politicians, haven't we? I'm going to bring you somebody very, very special and a little bit different. Meet Pebble, the guide dog, and her owner, Jess. Jess, thank you very much for talking to us on GB News. Hello, Pebble. She's absolutely beautiful. How old is she? How long have you had her? And tell us what she means to you.
So Pebble's 7. I've had her for 4 years now, and she's a superstar. She makes a huge difference to my independence.
She fits very, very calm. Is it a long day? Does she get fazed by anything? Does anything faze her?
Oh, she takes this all in her stride. She's so good. Like you say, she's very calm, very relaxed. Yeah, I'm very lucky.
And there's a campaign that you've got. You want to make people aware about parking on the pavement. Tell us why people need to think about that.
Sure. So if a car's parked blocking the footpath, a guide dog owner like myself, we have to go round it in the traffic. In the road, cars that I can't see. So it makes it very dangerous. I worry that people won't see us kind of approaching. I worry that she's in the road as well. So yeah, we're calling for a national law so that the footpaths are for people.
And I see there's another dog, if you can just pan round, there's another guide dog also called Pebble over there, a black Pebble. Is Pebble, is this a name that's just all the rage for guide dogs? What's going on there?
Oh, I don't know. It's the best name, I can say that. She's a gorgeous guide dog.
She's very lovely. Pebble, thank you very much. You've been extremely well behaved. She's brightened my day. I'm sure our viewers and listeners will have loved hearing and seeing about her. Back to you in the studio, Nana.
Oh, bless little Pebbles. That's lovely, isn't it? Dogs don't really like me for some odd reason. I don't know why that is, Catherine. My friend used to have one of those little collier type things. They're very, very small dogs. One was a brown and white one was a black and white one, and the black and white one would always just go for me as soon as it saw me. But this is beautiful. I think that's what's that? Is that a golden retriever or a Labrador? Not quite sure, but it's very, very cute. Huh?
Labrador.
It's a Labrador. Beautiful. Look at that. Oh, bless it. Oh, bless little Pebbles. Right, now listen, if you've just tuned in, welcome on board. We have been going live to the Labour Party conference. Very shortly, David Lammy will also be speaking and taking to the stage. We will bring you that live as well. Plus, we have Tom Harwood there at the conference, and, of course, Catherine Forster and Christopher Hope bringing you everything that is the Labour Party conference in Liverpool. Lots more coming up on today's show. But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Sophia Hill.
Nana, thank you. Very good afternoon. These are the top stories at 2:30. Chancellor Rachel Reeves' speech at the Labour Party conference was interrupted by a pro-Palestinian heckler. The Chancellor was setting out measures Labour had taken as the member of the audience began shouting about the, quote, mass starvation of Palestinians. Ms Reeves, however, defended Labour's approach.
But we are now a party in government, not a party of protest.
Elsewhere, the Home Secretary will unveil tougher conditions for migrants who want to settle in the UK. She says that applicants must speak fluent English, have a clean record and volunteer in their community before gaining indefinite leave to remain. Car maker Jaguar Land Rover has said that it will resume some manufacturing production in the coming days as it continues to deal with the fallout of a major cyber attack. They'll start a controlled and phased restart, but the company has acknowledged that there is still much more to be done. And rail passengers in Yorkshire will soon be able to pay for tickets by having their phones tracked. From today, travellers will be able to check in via a phone app, then GPS tracking when they leave the train. Those are the headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Thank you, Sophia. Lots more coming up on today's show. Can't book your GP online. Labour says it's time for change, but doctors are pushing back. All that and more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Fog clearing this morning and then a fine day for most of us. Some rain in the northwest, so not entirely dry across the United Kingdom. That rain courtesy of these weather fronts that are just going to brush into the northwest during the rest of Monday, thickening up the cloud across Scotland and Northern Ireland, bringing some higher cloud to parts of Wales and the southwest of England, so turning the sunshine a little more hazy. However, we keep the bright skies for the east of Scotland into eastern, central and southeastern England. Sunny spells, temperatures doing well, 19 Celsius. But not feeling so pleasant where we've got the cloud thickening and those outbreaks of rain pushing into parts of western and central Scotland, northwest England and Northern Ireland, along with a freshening breeze. But across England and Wales, it's a largely fine end to the day. Clear spells as the sun goes down. A few spots of rain there for Snowdonia, for example, and northwest England. Northern Ireland also 1 or 2 spots of rain as the cloud thickens, but the more persistent rain will be reserved for the west coast of Scotland and parts of northern Sutherland and Caithness. Into the evening, and those outbreaks of rain continue on and off for the north and west of Scotland. Northern Ireland sees a bit more rain coming along overnight, but for much of the rest of the UK, it's a dry night with clear spells, and as a result, along with the light winds, temperatures will fall away. Another chilly night to come for the south and southeast. A few mist and fog patches to wake up to on Tuesday morning. These will clear through the morning, and then plenty of sunny spells once again for the south and southeast. But for Scotland, Northern Ireland, for northwest England and for parts of North Wales, we're going to see a cloudy day with, again, light outbreaks of rain on and off through the day. A breezy day for many, but it's going to turn much wetter and much windier in the far northwest by Wednesday.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. On the M23 westbound between junction 9 and 9A, motorists are experiencing a 15-minute delay due to heavy congestion caused by high traffic volumes. Meanwhile, in Devon, the A38 westbound between A380 and A382 is dealing with a collision, currently resulting in one lane closure and causing significant delays. On the trains, there is major disruption on the East Midlands Railway between Luton and London St Pancras International. Additionally, issues are affecting the Gatwick Express running through Gatwick Airport. Stay alert and plan your journeys accordingly. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. Welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts. Jackie, we just showed a beautiful little guide dog. He was gorgeous. Jackie says, what a beautiful guide dog. Looks a bit bored, though. You know, can't blame him. Poor little dog. Then there's this one from David. He said, sorry if I'm missing something here, but just talking to friends and neighbours, none of us can remember a school library in primary school, secondary, yes, to help with homework. What is Rachel Rees on about? Rachel was talking about how she's putting policies in place for every school to have a library. But yeah, no, I remember the school library. But what do you think about this? GPs are apparently pushing back against government plans to make it easier to book appointments online. That seems a bit odd to me. They've warned that it would pile more pressure on already stretched practices. The British Medical Association, otherwise known as the BMA, has given Health Secretary Wes Streeting 48 hours to change course, but he insists he won't let progress be held back, calling it absurd that you can book a hairdresser online but not a GP. Well, joining us now to discuss this is Director of Silver Voices, Dennis Reed, and NHS Dr. Basha Mukherjee. All right, Dr. Mukherjee, I want to start with you, because this sounds like it's a pushback. GPs don't want to be inundated with people booking. I don't understand why that would be. That's what they're there for. It makes things a lot easier.
I just want to ask this. Do we actually think that GPs are trying to block patients from accessing care in the face of actually having lots of appointments? Do we actually think that GPs are sitting in their rooms not seeing patients? Or do we actually think that there's not enough GPs and that is why we're not able to provide the appointments? This system will allow patients to book one after another with having no idea as to whether or not they'll actually get to see the GP, which means that dangerous, potentially life-threatening illnesses could get missed easily, because now we're having essentially a whole load of bookings that might be coming through which might not get triaged in time. And that creates an extra layer of not just bureaucracy, but also safety issues.
Some people might say that it sounds like you've had it too easy for too long in that respect, that you can't have bookings one after the other after the other. I mean, that's what we all do. But let's get thoughts on Dennis. Dennis, what do you think?
Well, I think this is a really weird situation. We've spent the last 3 years arguing that many GP practices are pushing people onto online bookings, online booking systems, which are often quite complex. And we've been arguing that there ought to be equal weight given to appointments by telephone and appointments by walking into the reception. So we've been arguing that practices have actually been pushing people online, and now we hear that there's they don't want any more, basically. And simplification of the system is surely what is required. If people need to book online, why should they have to go through complex processes, filling out all their medical details from the past, as often is the case, and it turns people away? And, you know, the doctor may well say, do you think we're trying to stop people making appointments? I'm sure that individual GPs aren't doing that, but practices themselves, by the systems they operate, are deterring people, patients, from going to the GP. And instead, they land up in accident and emergency or just walk away with whatever symptoms they've got. Now, we can't have that. If somebody has a reason to see a GP, then it should be easy to make an appointment. If there's not enough doctors to make an appointment, that should be the argument that the doctors are having, not that they're not going to make online booking any easier.
Yeah. What do you say to that,
really
though?
Straight.
Go on.
I want to just get this very straight. We do see patients one after another. We don't have enough GPs, and this would mean that a GP would need to be going and checking, wading through all those requests. And bearing in mind, patients are already being suggested to go online. This service is already happening. And yes, I absolutely take your point that this definitely should be something that should be inclusive of our elderly population, some of whom aren't able to access online services, or they don't have the technological advancements to be able to do that. And I completely take that on board. This new system is saying that even after every single appointment in a day has been filled, or even the 2 weeks has been filled, patients can keep putting in requests, and someone has to deal with those requests within a 24 to 48 hour period, and it has to be a clinical person. Now, that is impossible to do. This means that GPs will be pulled away from seeing patients to doing this admin role, because we don't have anybody else qualified to do this at the moment, unless you think that a non-doctor needs to do that, which is going to definitely have lots of safety concerns.
Doctors who may have retired, or people who are prepared to come in and do a job that is like that, if that was specifically the role. But, you know, and your system could incorporate when there could be a pause when they're too full, or, you know, because my GP, once the triage appointments have finished, then it tells you there's no more triage appointments for the day. So
that's already happening. With this new system, that won't happen. The patients can keep booking, even after all the slots are filled.
No, but they won't be able to fill a slot that is full. So they'll have to fill a slot that isn't full. What's wrong with that?
That is already happening. We are already dealing with that.
So then what's the problem?
The problem is, at the moment, if, say, by 10 o'clock, all the slots are filled for the day, we close that booking system because all the day slots have gone. But at the moment, what this new rule would entail would mean that patients can carry on putting their requests in after 10 o'clock, regardless of all the slots being filled.
And
they still need someone to... Sorry?
OK, listen, we have to go because I'd love to talk to you for long. I'm going to bring you on my show on one weekend and you two can have a decent spat about it, because I want to have a good old chat about this one. I know the viewers would like to hear more. Thank you very much, Dr Basham Mukherjee and also Dennis Reed. Really good to talk to you. Thank you very much. All right, now a spokesperson for the BMA said entering dispute with the government simply establishes that the profession disputes these policies and contractual changes are as unsafe and requires resolutions for the dispute to be resolved. If nothing changes, then GPs will comply with the changes and explore options. Naturally, these will be decided in consultation with members and will be compliant with all legal requirements. Right, well, this is Good Afternoon Britain. Still to come, we'll be back at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool, where the Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy will be speaking imminently.
That's right, some big beasts still to come here at the Labour Party conference this Monday. David Lammy to be speaking very shortly indeed, and also still Shabana Mahmood, the new Home Secretary, to speak. One of the interesting things about David Lammy now, the Deputy Prime Minister, but of course he was demoted from the role of Foreign Secretary to Justice Secretary. But does he have a chip on his shoulder, I suppose? We'll have to find out.
All right, but if you're in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
There's still plenty of fine and warm weather across most of the Mediterranean, but it's a different story across parts of Spain, and in particular parts of southeast Spain and the Balearic Islands, where we're going to see some particularly heavy and persistent rain through the day on Tuesday. Flooding is possible in places, and warnings are in place as well. Scattered showers across parts of Italy, the Balkans and Greece, but many places staying dry with some sunny spells. And through the next few days, it stays largely fine with a mixture of sunny spells and cloud, and temperatures around average.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is Good Afternoon Britain. I'm Nana Akua, just gone 48 minutes after 2 o'clock. Let's cross live to Liverpool, and joining me now is my co-host and Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood. So, Tom, exciting news. David Lammy about to speak.
I know, Nana, it's the one you've been waiting for more than anyone else. I know you've got a particular thing for David Lammy. No, this is going to be a really interesting speech, I think. This is going to be a moment where we have a cabinet minister who's new to the job, but of course a very controversial department. I mean, it's the Justice Department that has seen the release of prisoners from just a third of their sentence, and we've seen some of the consequences of those early released prisoners in some parts of the country. The most astonishing policy choices, although of course the government says that it's because the prisons are full. There's nowhere to put the criminals and therefore they're flooding back out onto the streets. It has been a very difficult and controversial element of this government's first 14 months in power. But of course justice feeds into so many other different areas. The prisons are full, the courts are clogged. There's quite a lot of crisis ridden in this department.
We haven't really heard whether he seems bothered by moving from Foreign Secretary to Justice Secretary. Do you know what I mean? He seems quite OK with the role, even though he did a Foreign Secretary role the other day. But I'm curious as to find out what his plans will be and whether he's going to be as tough as Shabana Mahmood, who seemed to be saying and making all the right noises and saying all the right things. But David Lammy has often spoke for support of things like reparations and all the other stuff. So I'm wondering how effective he'll be and what he might be saying in his speech today.
Yes, I wonder also if he'll be attacking the Reform Party or his opposite number. Let's not forget the Shadow Justice Secretary is Robert Jenrick, and he's widely seen as one of the most effective shadow cabinet ministers, sort of a very active individual. So there could be some words for Robert Jenrick in his speech too. I'd be surprised, frankly, if there weren't. But yes, you're right to say that he faced this demotion because in a way, it would have been fascinating to be a fly on the wall in those negotiations. You know, David, you're being demoted from Foreign Secretary to Justice Secretary. And he said, no, I'm not. Yes, you are. Well, I'm not leaving the room until you give me something else. OK, fine, you can have the title of Deputy Prime Minister. Does it come with any powers? No. You know, this sort of consolation prize of becoming Deputy Prime Minister, it has actually happened before when Dominic Raab was demoted from Foreign Secretary to Justice Secretary in exactly the same way that David Lammy was. He, of course, was made Deputy Prime Minister at the same time.
And I notice also a lot of Labour politicians seem to be caught out with the question as to whether Nigel Farage's policy of indefinite leave to remain was racist. I don't know whether you saw Stephen Reid not being able to answer questions as well. And I've noticed a theme with some of those on the Labour Party that they won't answer correct questions directly and talk about something else. I'm hoping in David's speech he might talk a little bit about migration. He might talk about the justice system itself and the problems that the CPS are having. I'm hoping that he gives us something, because so far a lot of the speeches have been a little bit wishy-washy with no real substance.
Yes, there's been a bit of government minister-itis going around the conference, and that's the affliction that you get when you're asked a question and you simply pivot and talk about literally anything else. I think, to be fair, we saw lots of Tory ministers do that too. I'm sure if Reform get into government, there will be the same thing. The thing is, when you're in power, there are just some questions they would rather not answer, and some are incredibly brazen about just answering a completely different question than the one that was asked. But the brilliant thing about people like Camilla Tominey on her Sunday morning programme was she doesn't let it go. You know, you ask the question, if the politician gives a completely different answer, ask it again and ask it until you get that answer. But I think there has been an uptick. I think perhaps it correlates with when the country isn't doing so well, when growth is on the floor, when migration is out of control, where everywhere the government looks there's sort of a crisis and a crisis and a crisis. The list of questions that they're very comfortable answering, well, that is a very shrinking list.
And I think they've probably all been told, if you mention Nigel Farage, you're only allowed to mention it once. So I know Rachel Reeves, she talked a lot about the Tories, didn't mention Kevin Badenoch, but then once mentioned Nigel Farage and then moved on. So I'm wondering if we do our little tally of mentions from Nigel Farage. And the other sort of elephant in the room is Andy Burnham. Are you getting much talk about him potentially running for leadership? And also apparently Sadiq Khan was throwing his hat in the ring as well.
There's all sorts of speculation here in the conference. And I I think this is one of the interesting things. It says more about the position of Keir Starmer, perhaps, than it does about the position of either Sadiq Khan or Andy Burnham. I'm sure there are a whole host of people who'd quite like to be Prime Minister. But the fact that so many people here in this conference are entertaining the idea that a Prime Minister could be replaced 14 months after winning the biggest general election victory of any party this century, I mean, it is just astonishing, given the scale of the Labour Party's victory. They've got more than 400 seats in the House of Commons. I was over at the Labour Party shop on the floor of the conference a little bit earlier, and you can buy a T-shirt at that shop, Nana, that has a picture of Parliament on it, sort of dots representing MPs, and the number of MPs, the number of Labour MPs is just astonishing. David Lammy's on his feet. Let's listen to him.
All right.
Former Justice Secretary, now Home Secretary, who did so much to lift our country out of the prisons emergency that we inherited, Shabana Mahmood. And also my wonderful ministerial team, Sarah Sackman, James Timpson, Alex Davies-Jones, Jake Richards and Alison Levitt. Thank you so much. Thank you. Conference friends, I was raised by a strong single mother who often struggled to put food on the table. But she fought hard to give her children the best start she could. So I know what a real working class hero looks like when I see one. And in recent years, I've had the honour of working alongside one of those heroes. Someone who got Britain building again, won new rights for working people, and is the beacon of working women across our nation. Conference, join me in thanking Angela Rayner for all she has done and all she will continue to do. And let us pay tribute to another working class hero, a titan of our party. He helped deliver the Kyoto Climate Change Agreement. He helped deliver devolution in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. He helped us win 3 general elections. We lost him last November, but he left an indelible mark on our movement and our country. Former Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott. And now I want to tell you a story about the difference that the Labour government makes. When I was back in opposition, I visited Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories. It was a year before the horror of October the 7th, before Hamas terrorists killed and took so many Israeli hostages, before the devastating loss of Palestinian lives Israel has caused in Gaza. I met with the then Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority. He looked me in the eye and he asked me one question. If Labour win, will you stick to your party's commitment to recognise a state of Palestine? I said we would. The Tories opposed it, Reform opposed it, but last week we honoured our commitment. Britain now recognises the state of Palestine. This is the difference. A Labour government wakes. This horrific war must end. The hostages must be released. We need a two-state solution because the Palestinian cause is a just cause. Israelis and Palestinians must be able to live side by side in peace with equal rights, equal dignity, equal freedom. Conference, governing in hard times is not new to our party and to our movement. In 1947, as Attlee's Labour governed out of the ashes of the Second World War, rationing continued to bite and the public was growing weary. But did Attlee, Bevin, Morrison wring their hands? No, they built the National Health Service, new towns and the welfare state. In 1967, Harold Wilson's Labour faced devaluation, and the very next year, the ugly rise of Enoch Powell. Did Wilson retreat? No. He championed the white heat of technology, the Open University, the Equal Pay Act. And back in 2000, when I entered Parliament, Tony Blair's Labour at that point was facing fuel protests. And you might remember the Women's Institute booed Tony at a conference speech. Did we give up? No. We held our nerve. We kept Britain moving. Record investments in schools, in hospitals, the minimum wage, Sure Start for every single child. This is Labour's story. Not ducking hard choices, but facing them down. And today we are showing that leadership again. Don't let our opponents tell you the Labour government has not made a difference. Don't let them tell you there's no difference between us and the other side. Don't let them pretend all politicians are the same. We aren't. Remind them of everything we've done already in the first year. 5 interest rate cuts. The fastest growth in the G7. Wages rising more than 10 times over this last 10 months than the Tories in the last 10 years. We're cutting NHS waiting lists. We said 2 million extra appointments. We delivered 5 million. We gave parents 30 hours extra of free childcare, saving them up to $7.5 grand a year. We signed trade deals with the EU, with the US, with India. We reformed planning, unlocking billions, delivering the highest house building in decades. That's the difference a Labour government makes. And conference, I know that you know, after my friend Khadija Say died on the 9th floor of Grenfell Tower along with 71 others, I was the first to call for an inquiry. You also know that after my parents' generation, the Windrush generation, who gave so much but took so little, were stripped of their rights, deported, detained, denied housing, healthcare and work, I led the campaign for justice. So it was the honour of my life in my first weeks as Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary to meet with the Hillsborough families and bring the Hillsborough law to Parliament. So here in Liverpool, I say working people seeking justice will never walk alone again. That is the difference a Labour government makes. That is the difference a Labour government makes. That is the difference a Labour government makes. And friends, when you see Nigel Farage measuring the curtains of Downing Street, look around the world. In Australia, Labour trailed by 10 points until they won. In Canada, the Liberals 20 points behind until they won. In Norway, just a few weeks ago, Labour 16 points behind until they won. The lesson is clear. Progressives win when they follow the North Star of our values and the guardrails of our realism. Not through scapegoats, not through stunts, but through hope, purpose and progress. My first task as your Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary is to bring these values to our justice system. Justice has been the constant thread throughout my life. Growing up in the shadow of Tottenham's Broadwater Farm estate in Thatcher's Britain, it wasn't easy. I was stopped and searched by the police. I saw too many people who looked like me who ended up on the wrong side of the law. But education gave me a different path. I studied law, I practiced as a young lawyer, I served as a minister, I led the review into racial disparities in the justice system. I shadowed the Justice Secretary in opposition. This is not just another brief for me. It feels like coming home. Conference, in taking the role of Lord Chancellor, my starting point is Magna Carta. No one is above the law. No one should have justice delayed. No one should have justice denied. And yet under the Conservatives, prisons were bursting at 99% capacity. Courts had record backlogs, rape victims waiting for years before their case came to trial. Legal aid deserts right across the country, probation officers at breaking point. Justice delayed and justice denied. That is the Tory legacy we have been left to fix. So, Conference, this is how we're going about putting it right. First, we've got to rebuild trust, because justice is not a slogan. It means the victim heard, not silenced, the woman fleeing violence safe, not turned away, the community protected, not paying $18 billion a year for reoffending. We will strengthen victims' rights. We will open up the courts to people so they serve them. We will crack down on illicit finance. And second, we will modernize justice. Probation officers have told me, help us spend less time on form filling and more time on changing people's lives. So we will use technology for people, not against them. AI to cut paperwork, electronic tags to keep communities safe, digitalized courts that deliver justice without delay. And third, punishment that works. In 14 years, the Tories built just 500 extra prison places. In 14 months, we've delivered 2,500, and we're on track for 14,000 extra prison places by 2031. The fastest prison building programme since the Victoria age. We're recruiting thousands more probation officers. And let me just say, we in this room know that probation officers are the unsung heroes of our justice system. We're reforming sentencing, so justice is not just about locking people up, but turning lives around. If you go to prison addicted, we will help you clean up. If you go into prison without skills, we will help you train up. And if you go into prison without a chance, we will give you an opportunity. Our Labour Party will never give up on the power of redemption. Working hand in glove with the National Health Service, the DWP, with businesses and industry, with Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, because justice is not the work of one minister. It is the project of a nation united in its pursuit of fairness. While others divide, we will build coalitions that work. And today I can confirm an important innovation. That's the expansion of intensive supervision courts. For too long, our criminal justice system has been stuck in a cycle. Short sentences that change nothing. The same people reoffending again and again and again. Intensive supervision courts are about breaking that cycle. They bring the full force of the courts together with local services, and they keep reoffenders coming back to face the judiciary as they turn their lives around. It's tougher, it's more demanding, but it's punishment that works. And here in Liverpool, I'm proud to announce that we will establish a new women's site. This city, once again, leading the way. And let us end the lie about one of Attlee's greatest creation, legal aid. The myth of fat cat lawyers is destructive. Legal aid lawyers are not rich. Many are paid less than nurses, teachers, and the police who rely on them in court. They are the high street lawyers of Cornwall and Tottenham, Liverpool and Leeds, serving their communities for much less than they could earn elsewhere. I'm so proud that Hillsborough law means never again will grieving families be left without a lawyer when the state lines up against them. Conference, this marks the biggest expansion of legal aid in a generation, backed by the biggest investment in a decade. And we will champion our legal services across the world, worth £42 billion a year, employing 300,000 people, 2/3 of them outside of London, because we know when British law is strong, Britain is strong. And that's why I'm proud to announce that we are launching the new English Law Panel, uniting voices across the sector to promote English law worldwide as a gold standard that drives growth. Robert Jenrick, of course, doesn't get it. He sees himself next in line as Tory leader. He's so good at his job, he got Shabana a promotion. He attacks our judges and institutions. Frankly, much of what he said would make Winston Churchill shudder in his grave. Robert, patriotism isn't smearing our independent judiciary from a pub on X. It's standing up for the rule of law. Magna Carta, habeas corpus, the rule of law, they are Britain's gifts to the world. The other person who doesn't get it, of course, is Nigel Farage. He wraps himself in our flag, but his policies don't match British values. We must call his scheme to round up and deport our French, our Indian, our Caribbean neighbours who already have indefinite leave to remain what it is. It is racist. I say not in our country, not in our name, not in our time. That's the choice, conference. Real patriotism that builds people up, or pound shop patriotism that drags Britain down. Reform, choose grievance. The Tories choose anger. We choose progress. We choose hope. We choose justice, because fairness is Britain's highest value, because the rule of law is Britain's greatest gift to the world. Together we will deliver justice for all. When Keir Hardie campaigned for unemployment benefits and protections for minors, he wanted justice for all. When Harold Wilson delivered the Race Relations Act in the 1960s, he wanted justice for all. When the great Barbara Castle introduced the Equal Pay Act, she wanted justice for all. When Tony Blair created the Human Rights Act, what did he want? He wanted justice for all. When Gordon Brown created the Minimum Wage Conference, what did he want? Justice for all. Angela Rayner brought the Employment Bill to Parliament this year. What did she want? Justice for all. And when Keir Starmer brought the Hillsborough Law to Parliament last week, what did he want? He wanted justice for all. Justice for all. That is what a Labour government will deliver the people of our country. Let's get to work. Thank you, conference.
Welcome to the Martin Daubner Show. David Lammy there giving a blistering speech at the Labour Party conference. Of course, the line that everybody will be talking about after today is this: we must call out Nigel Farage's plan to deport our French, Indian and Caribbean neighbours. It is racist, he said. Not in our names, not in our times. He got a standing ovation from the conference on that, the finale of his speech. Wasn't the first time he mentioned Nigel Farage in his speech. Like the rest of them, he seems to be obsessed with Nigel Farage, even though he isn't there. He said, when you see Nigel Farage measuring the curtains of Downing Street, remember, Labour have been